Okay, let's continue. What's
You've no doubt
alienation?
experienced the
I think we went
sensation
through
of being
everything
a
in episode
cog in a
15. What is
machine
the
at some
base and the
point. The
superstructure?
feeling of
I
detachment
think
and
that
disconnection in your
we got through
daily
it all.
life. Living
So,
for the weekend because the majority of
what
your
I'm going to do
life
is
is
this.
spent toiling for your capitalist overlord. Barely making enough to scrape by while your boss grows rich off the back of your labour. The little time you can find outside of work is your only opportunity to truly live. Marx summed this up in 1844 when he wrote that the worker only feels himself outside his work, and in his work he feels outside himself. He feels at home when he's not working, and when he is working he does not feel at
This
home.
for
His
now.
labour is therefore not voluntary but coerced. It is forced labour. As a result, therefore, man, the worker, only feels himself freely active in his animal functions, eating, drinking, procreating, or at most in his dwelling and in dressing up, etc. And in his human functions at work, he no longer feels himself to be anything but an animal. Here Marx is referring to the concept of alienation or estrangement, a point that hits hard for a lot of working people who experience this sensation of being chewed up and spit out day after day by the capitalist system that we're living under. It's also a topic that's been heavily debated among Marxists for reasons that'll become clear later on in the video. So, what is alienation? What are workers alienated from exactly? And why is this a subject of such intense, heated debate among Marxists? Let's find out. Welcome to Socialism 101, a series designed to help educate people with no prior knowledge on the basics of socialism and communism from an ML and MLM perspective with short and easily digestible videos. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. If you'd like to support Marxist educational content, then toss €1 or $1 per month over on Patreon to help keep this series going. If you're not in a position to support financially, you can help out a lot by just sharing these videos around on social media. Now, when talking about alienation, this broadly refers to detachment, estrangement, or disconnection from something. Alienation has occurred in various ways under all class societies, including slave society and feudalism. But the young Karl Marx argued in his economic and philosophical manuscript of 1844 that alienation presents most intensely under the capitalist mode of production. And he claimed that it occurs in four main ways. 1. Alienation from the product of labour. 2. Alienation from the act of production. 3. Alienation from humanity's species being. And 4. Alienation from other people. Let's take a look at each of these one by one. First, workers are alienated from the product of their labour. Workers produce goods. The capitalist then takes away these goods from the worker and sells them to realise a profit, creating an immediate disconnection between the worker and the product of their labour. As labour power is purchased at a lower cost than the value that labour itself produces, the worker can never afford to purchase all the products that they have created back from the capitalists. The products of labour are thus permanently detached or alienated from the worker who produced them. To demonstrate this, look at the clothes that you're wearing. Who made them? You likely don't know the workers who produced them, nor do the workers know you. The product of labour is detached or alienated from the worker who has produced it. Instead, you'll likely just see a brand of some kind, demonstrating the capitalist's appropriation of the product of the workers' labour and revealing that it's been detached or alienated from the workers themselves. Furthermore, the workers who created these clothes will never be able to purchase all these products that they've created. For example, workers in Bangladesh making 50 cents per hour would never be able to buy back all the high-end consumer goods that they're creating that are sold in the global north for hundreds of euros or dollars. Alienation from the product of labour is thus a permanent feature of the capitalist mode of production. Second, workers are alienated from the act of production itself insofar as the fact that workers don't freely engage in production of their own accord, but they instead labour in order to gain a wage so that they may survive. If they don't work, they can't afford food, shelter, clothing, or any of life's necessities. They consequently sell labour power to capitalists not freely of their own accord, but are forced to do so as a result of economic coercion. In selling their labour power, workers' labour then belongs to someone else, the capitalists. The labour, the act of producing, becomes external to the worker. It's estranged or alienated. The external character of labour for the worker appears in the fact that it is not his own, but someone else's. That it does not belong to him. That in it he belongs not to himself, but to another. The worker's activity is not his spontaneous activity. It belongs to another. It is the loss of his self. Left to our own devices, we could engage in the kind of labour that we found most useful both individually and collectively, whether that be in producing art or helping to build homes for those in need. Instead, we perform the labour demanded of us by capitalists who seek nothing more than the realisation of profit to the detriment of all else, determined by the whims of the market and the anarchy of production. So not only are workers alienated from the act of production under capitalism due to the economic coercion which forces them to sell their labour power, they're also alienated by what the capitalist forces them to produce, whether that's the shoes that are made in the sweatshop or the burger that's prepared in the restaurant. Neither are produced in accordance with the desires of the workers, but instead in accordance with the requirements of capital. As workers don't control the means of production, we find ourselves being controlled by the means of production, transformed into little more than an appendage of a larger process of production over which workers have no control. We become merely cogs in someone else's money-making machine. Third, in his early writings, Marx claims that workers are alienated from our species being or species essence. Marx suggested that there was a human essence that separated humans from other animals. The essence or spirit of humanity, humanity's species being, was that humans engage in labour and produce beyond our immediate needs, while other animals produce only what they need directly. Humans don't simply produce shelter and grow food. We also create art and write songs and make spaceships to send people to the moon. Marx explains that an animal only produces what it immediately needs for itself or its young. It produces one-sidedly, whilst man produces universally. An animal produces only under the dominion of immediate physical need, whilst man produces even when he is free from physical need and only truly produces in freedom therefrom. He suggested that this production that occurs beyond physical necessity is what allows people to transcend other animals and become truly human, to fully self-actualize. It is just in his work upon the objective world, therefore, that man really proves himself to be a species being. This production is his active species life. Through this production, nature appears as his work and his reality. The object of labour is, therefore, the objectification of man's species life, for he duplicates himself not only as in consciousness intellectually, but also actively in reality, and therefore he sees himself in a world that he has created. So if workers are unable to produce freely beyond physical necessity, they're detached or alienated from the defining feature of human nature itself, according to early Marx. Alienation from the product of labour and the act of production, as mentioned earlier, means workers are alienated from humanity and become no more than any other animals, robots, or simple cogs in a machine. Estranged labour, therefore, turns man's species being, both nature and his intellectual species power, into a being alien to him and a means of his individual existence. It estranges man from his own body, from nature as it exists outside him, from his spiritual essence, his human existence. Now, you may be surprised to hear Karl Marx writing about humanity's spiritual essence, particularly if you're more familiar with Marx's later writing, which has a much more detached, scientific, economically focused tone. Keep this point in mind, we're going to circle back to it after discussing the fourth type of alienation. Now, fourth, under the capitalist mode of production, workers are alienated from other workers, or more broadly, people are alienated from other people. Connecting this to the three previous forms of alienation already discussed, Marx writes that an immediate consequence of the fact that man is estranged from the product of his labour, from his life activity, from his species being, is the estrangement of man from man. When man confronts himself, he confronts the other man. What applies to a man's relation to his work, to the product of his labour and to himself, also holds of a man's relation to the other man and to the other man's labour and object of labour. However, alienation from other people is perhaps demonstrated a bit more concretely in Marx's later concept of commodity fetishism, which reveals the way in which the commodities that we encounter on the market mystify us and obscure the real human relations which are involved in the creation and distribution of these products. For example, it's generally impossible for us to know the workers in the sweatshops and the working conditions under which the products we encounter on the market have been created. The worker who produced the product is detached from it, and we as consumers purchase these detached products. This means that we as consumers are also detached or alienated from the workers themselves who produced it. Thus, the real social relations between people ourselves are hidden, and in its place appear to us merely relations between things, the money in our pocket and the product on the shelf. In this way, the capitalist mode of production makes us detached, disconnected, estranged, and alienated from one another. Now, I mentioned earlier that alienation is a contentious topic that's subject to a lot of debate among Marxists. The main point of debate is around the concept of species being and a spiritual essence of humanity, which Marx used as the basis for other forms of alienation under capitalism in his early writing. This will seem completely out of place if you've come to Marx through his later work, which roots itself firmly in materialism rather than idealist notions of spirits or any kind of trans-historical metaphysical human nature that stands outside of history, detached from the objective material conditions of any given epoch. In fact, this contrast is so stark that Marx's work is often divided into pre-1845 early Marx and post-1845 late Marx. Early Marx is generally characterised as bearing heavy remnants from the left Hegelian tradition and dialectical idealism rather than dialectical materialism. Consequently, early Marx appears to harbour strong humanist sentiments that rely on some kind of essential human nature or inner spirit that exists outside of history, independent of material conditions. Conversely, late Marx is firmly rooted in the science of historical materialism that situates matter as the starting point for all that exists rather than spirit, breaking decisively from the remnants of bourgeois ideology that were present in early Marx's writing. The rupture from early Marxist humanism occurs specifically in the 1845 Theses on Feuerbach, when Marx writes that Feuerbach resolves the religious essence into the human essence, but the human essence is no abstraction inherent in each single individual. In its reality, it is the ensemble of the social relations. Feuerbach, who does not enter upon a criticism of this real essence, is consequently compelled to abstract from the historical process and to fix the religious sentiment as something by itself and to presuppose an abstract, isolated human individual. Essence, therefore, can be comprehended only as genus, as an internal dumb generality which naturally unites the many individuals. So, as we can see, Marx here breaks from his own concept of an abstract species being that he wrote so much about just 1 year prior in his economic and philosophical manuscripts, instead moving to understanding phenomena as developing dialectically as part of historical processes rooted in material conditions and social relations at all times. This was an epistemological break from the remnants of bourgeois idealism present in Marx's earlier writing, and marks a qualitative leap forward into the development of a truly proletarian ideology. So, where does this leave the concept of alienation when its basis on human species being is removed? Well, there may have been rupture from the idealist aspects of it, but there's also continuity. Marx returns to alienation in the Grundrisse in the late 1850s and speaks about it solely in a technical sense of detachment from the product of labour, the act of production, and from other people, where in his early writings he would connect each of these to a sense of disconnection from humanity's inner spirit.
You're kidding.
The concept of
You're
alienation is also present this way throughout Capital,
okay.
though arguably in a de-emphasised form, operating behind the scenes while Marx discusses alienated commodities and commodity fetishism, alienation as it pertains to the working day, the way in which workers become the appendage of the productive process in their extremely specialised positions within the production line, and so on. So the concept of alienation clearly persists throughout Marx's later writing, but its humanist basis upon the species being, human nature, or inner spirituality is dropped in favour of a scientific, historical materialist basis. Today we've taken a look at Marx's concept of alienation under capitalism and how it developed over the course of his life's work. We began by looking at alienation from the product of labour, which persists throughout both early Marx and late Marx's writing. We proceeded to look at alienation from the act of production, which also persists. We then looked at alienation from species being, which is dropped from late Marx's writing following 1845's Theses on Feuerbach. And we then looked at alienation from others, connecting it to Marx's related concept of commodity fetishism. Lastly, we highlighted the development of the theory of alienation from its early idealist and humanistic basis upon species being, or human's inner spirituality, in texts like the philosophical and economic manuscripts of 1844, to its later materialist manifestation appearing in the Grundrisse, Capital, and other late Marx works both explicitly and implicitly. One more thing. The debate around alienation is largely divided along the lines of humanist Marxists and anti-humanist Marxists. For clarity's sake, I want to acknowledge that the form of alienation emphasised in this video would fall into the latter camp, rejecting idealist conceptions of spirit, species being, and so on. Consequently, the versions of alienation described here, despite using young Marx's categorizations, have been presented as more in line with the positions maintained by late Marx, the Marx who wrote Capital, the Grundrisse, and so on, which don't rely on species being and instead focus primarily on the material realm. There's a reading and resources list in the description box below that I strongly recommend diving into if you're interested in learning about the different positions on alienation and the humanism versus anti-humanism divide. Make sure to have a read of Louis Althusser's Marxism and Humanism from 1964 to clarify that rupture between early Marx and late Marx. If you're looking for podcasts and YouTube videos that dive into this further, Alison and Brett from the Red Menace podcast do an excellent job at making the case for these different positions on alienation in their episode on the philosophical and economic manuscripts of 1844. As does David Harvey in his podcast, The Anti-Capitalist Chronicles Alienation Part 1. And of course, the Marxist Project's video here on YouTube, The Fundamentals of Marx Alienation, all of which are linked in the description box below. Right, thanks very much for watching this video. Hopefully you found it useful in one way or another, even if you've now got more questions than you arrived with. Thanks especially to the supporters on Patreon who persevere against all odds and continue to make these videos possible. Thank you Ian McShay, Ugopnik, Borkio Gorilla, Ryan Hodgson, Soup, Madeline, Sonic232, Sagan, Michaela Schmid, Christian Nepales, Brian Ruiz, Alfonso Dingo Torres, Megalova, Rock Artist, Grangry, Todd Sprang, Nike DeSage, Zakasi, Anglo-Irish Bolshevik, Amy Schmidt, Eli Leslie, Thomas Rossum Wood, Jason Schmidt, Del Siebold, Train H13, Meowsifer, Hunter Johnson, Donald Quistleva, 60 Velan, Kale Marks, Roja, MLM in Practice, Eric Lindahl, ZK Goody, Kyle Rapp, Doc Toma, Iob Farah, Becky, Pastor Schubert, A Mouthwash Bottle, Mr. Miyamoto, Kyle King, Reverend Londom Hollywood, Wonderbad, JT Chapman, Jose, Joseph Shepard, Jack Schneidman, Comrade Amara, Wealth for the 99%, Spoop, and Trailer Park Communist. Cheers everyone, agus slán go fóill.
This episode and others like it are brought to you by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support this channel, get access to our patrons-only Discord, and early access to every video, This episode is made possible by Ren.
Will never understand people.
They're the worst.
Oftentimes, when you talk about socialism with someone, you get to this point in the conversation. Socialism sounds good in theory, but it could never work in real life. People are too competitive, too greedy, too selfish, too cruel, too violent, too insert something bad. They're the worst.
They're the worst.
Or sometimes, the conversation doesn't focus on how evil people are, but on how commerce-driven humans are. Socialism would never work because humans are economic animals with brains built for trade and maximizing our returns on investment. Much of the public debate about socialism doesn't really focus on the merits of socialism. Instead of debating whether it would be better if everyone was housed, fed, free from exploitation, and working shorter days, because it's immediately obvious that it would be, or how we might get there and the institutions that would coordinate these needs, the conversation gets cut short on the grounds that it's unrealistic. Despite socialists proving the possibility of these things empirically, through experimentation, logic, and historical or cross-cultural parallel, all these efforts are struck down by these really simple statements that just kind of sound true. Sure, capitalism sucks, but that's because humans suck, so why should we believe socialism could be any better? Socialism is pie in the sky. It's hubris from young people who don't know how the world works yet. Just wait till you hit your 30s and you'll grow out of it. And I understand why this works. It's a convincing idea. Everyone has people in their life who are greedy, selfish jerks, and everyone can recognize the part of themselves that is a greedy, selfish jerk. It stands to reason that human nature has, at the very least, an element of selfishness and cruelty to it. But this has very little to do with socialism, and as a justification for capitalism, it's a very strange one. In this video, I'm not going to prove what human nature is or isn't. If you'd like to watch a video approaching this question from a biological perspective, go check out my buddy Ugopnik's video from a couple months ago, where he breaks down the nature versus nurture debate using twin studies and emerging science on epigenetics. Don't like that? Check out Andrewism's video about how different philosophical traditions have interpreted the human nature argument across time and space, and the kinds of society that flourished with different understandings of humanity. Two great videos, two very different approaches, two pretty similar conclusions. Human nature is not a very good argument. In this video, I'm going to take a third approach to this conclusion. We're going to be looking at how this idea of a singular, corrupt, logical, and self-interested human nature gains traction as a defense of capitalism, the inherent contradictions of this idea, and why it doesn't actually undermine socialist politics. And I know I'm fighting a stupid battle here. The human nature argument is one that takes like 3 seconds to make, and that anti-socialists never feel like they have to justify. Except maybe by pointing to someone doing something bad and calling it proof, or relying on the assumption that if a past socialist experiment failed, it was because of human nature. Debunking this is going to take me many minutes, because I'm not going to take those easy shortcuts, and maybe that makes what I'm doing even dumber. Anyway, the first thing to address with a lot of these human nature claims is how weirdly essentializing they are. For some reason, when human nature is invoked, it's always the part of human nature that sucks that we focus on, despite the fact that we have millions of examples of people being selfless. People regularly make massive personal sacrifices before their brain even has the time to compute what kind of selfish benefit they might gain from it. There are plenty of documented cases of people jumping into a river to save a drowning stranger at the drop of a hat, and probably even more undocumented cases of the same thing. Hundreds of millions of hours are volunteered every year. Mutual aid networks exist throughout the world. And on a daily basis, you almost certainly do something kind for someone else. Tiny little selfless acts like opening a door for someone are almost invisible in our everyday life because they're so immediate and common. I'll admit these aren't the strongest arguments I've ever made on this channel, but the reason I'm not spending too much time on them is because, 1, as I'll flesh out later in the video, socialism doesn't require selflessness by any means. A socialist world could work even if it was filled with people who are fundamentally, ontologically greedy. And 2, before we even get to that, I have to point out that there's no reason to think people are more fundamentally greedy than they are generous. And even if we are more fundamentally greedy, the simple fact that selfishness and greed exist is not a justification for building an economic system that rewards that behavior. If you believe that humans are naturally selfish, rather than believing that it's something we're capable of and that we're equally capable of kindness, and most of the time we just flip-flop between the two, that's fine. I probably won't be able to convince you otherwise. But I won't spend too much time on that because no matter what you believe human nature is, it doesn't logically follow that selfishness and greed should be the ticket to wealth and power in our society. If you think we're all rotten to our core, you're going to need another piece of evidence or some other argument to prove to me that that means our society should reward those who take this to the extreme. That the most openly selfish and greedy of us deserve to be on top. My guess is those arguments aren't going to be very convincing. I don't know many people that believe society would be best served when selfish people are
Oh
in
man,
charge
wait,
and have
what?
more power to
Why
be
am I-
selfish. But
No
not
viewers?
all arguments about human nature
Am I
as a
reconnecting again?
justification for capitalism take this form.
Nope.
Instead of arguing for capitalism from the point of greed and selfishness, both of which have a negative connotation, some people claim that we are built for the profit-seeking trade that capitalism depends on, and that capitalism actually evolved out of this aspect of human nature. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, one of the first and most influential defenders of capitalism, wrote that there is, quote, a certain propensity in human nature. The propensity to truck, barter, and exchange one thing for another. Unlike animals, Smith says that humans are simply designed to exchange and compare and seek out the best deal. As a counterexample, Smith says, quote, nobody ever saw a dog make a fair and deliberate exchange of one bone for another with another dog. But we people, we're human because we are driven towards profit by trade, and therefore capitalism is just the inevitable social system that results from individual behaviors. The problem is that Smith just made this up. He made it up. He's not wrong that humans trade and that for the most part, animals don't. But all Smith did was see that people around him were trading goods for other goods or for currency. He saw that other animals weren't doing it, and so he essentialized it as part of human nature basically on a whim. He assumed that this must be something humans are hardwired to do, and that we must have always done. In The Wealth of Nations, Smith imagines, which is to say he guesses, that the history of humanity is one where we start trading small goods with one another. I'll give you this thing for that thing. Then we figure out that this is inefficient as we specialize in our labor, and therefore start creating currencies. First we use salt and leather to trade goods, and eventually we figure out precious metals work best because they travel well and you can standardize them. And eventually, quite naturally, you get a market system based on maximizing the amount of precious metals you have. This then becomes more complex and larger until you develop systems of debt and accounting. And soon enough, you have capitalism. If you've ever taken an Econ 101 class, there's a good chance you've heard this story before. Capitalism, for Smith, happens very naturally, and it all starts from the fact that this is just how humans work and interact with one another. It's a really effective justification for capitalism, because if maximizing profit through trade is just what humans do, and it transcends time and space, then every outcome of trade is justified. Why would we ever question it or get in its way? Morality is always changing, it's different from person to person, and nobody can agree on it. But profit-seeking is immortal, and it's part of us, so it becomes untouchable. But
Still think that it takes money to make money? Bullshit. That's just what rich people want you to believe so that they can carry on making passive income.
But like I said, this was just Adam Smith's best guess. When you go looking through history and throughout the world, as David Graeber does in Debt the First 5,000 Years, this story of truck and barter becoming currency, becoming capitalism, just doesn't exist anywhere. The ethnologist Caroline Humphrey puts it really bluntly. No example of a barter economy, pure and simple, has ever been described, let alone the emergence from it of money. All available ethnography suggests that there has never been such a thing. Most of human existence until very recently was spent just giving other people stuff. Different societies in different parts of the world did things differently. Some would have central collection points where resources would be gathered and then redistributed. In other places, people privileged gift giving as a means of exchange. And almost everywhere, people just gave each other things and services either for nothing in return or the vague idea that the other person owed them one. Adam Smith's idea that people were out there figuring out how many bones were worth one really good stick and this eventually turning into capitalism is just not something we've ever been able to find historical proof of. What we do have plenty of proof of is that for most of human existence, we ran our economies on gifts and the common ownership of resources. Barter existed, but at most it was a very small part of human life, and one that you were pretty unlikely to ever encounter at any point in human history. The historical record doesn't seem to show that it's in our human nature to truck and barter, at least a lot less than it indicates that it's in our nature to work together and make collective decisions. And look, I'm not saying that we should limit our imagination for what society should look like based on what we think human nature is, or what we're able to find in pre-existing social models. I'm just saying that if your justification for capitalism is that it's more respectful of our propensity to barter, the historical record shows we are way more capable of doing things differently. Even if someday we find out that Adam Smith had a lucky guess and we did indeed spend most of history getting really good at trading stuff, that wouldn't make capitalism more justifiable because capitalism isn't just about trade. Capitalism is an economic system where a few people own all the tools we need to make stuff. The factories, the farms, the machinery, in other words, the means of production, and use this privileged ownership to employ the vast majority of people to work and transform it into something productive. Trade is a small part of the equation, but Adam Smith makes it seem like it's at the core of capitalism, and that it comes from who we are as humans. The reality is that capitalism is an economic system that has only properly existed for 500 years tops. The first people of our species, Homo sapiens, have been kicking it on Earth for several 100,000 years. Neoclassical economists, like Smith, would have you believe that we stumbled on capitalism, discovered it, as if it were a fact of human life that was out there untouched, but informing the development of our species. These economists, the first capitalist theorists, set out to do for economics what physicists had achieved around the same time: discover a natural property of the world. But this project is impossible, because we made capitalism up. It's the product of a specific historical context. On the one hand, you had the growing power of a merchant class butting up against the dying power of a monarchical class. Feudalism was toppled over the course of a few revolutions and then exported around the world in a series of bloody conquests. And it happened not because we are built for capitalism, but because the feudal system just happened to set the stage for capitalism. Laws introduced the idea of private property, and technologies facilitating trade and production allowed people not born into nobility to acquire wealth. That's why we have capitalism today. Not because it's in our human nature, but because in a specific context it was the most efficient way to accumulate and then hold on to power. The idea that it was part of our human nature only came after. Our present hegemonic view of humans, as either a bloody, greedy, violent animal ready to descend into barbarity at the drop of a hat, or a rational, calculating, self-interested trader, came to dominate at precisely the same time as it became useful for giving legitimacy to the new political order. When capitalism emerged, it came with the myth that we are somehow incredibly rational in the context of a market, owing to our supposed predisposition to trade, but incredibly irrational and prone to violence in all other social matters. The natural solution seemed to fit with the existing society: an economy organized by a market coupled with a powerful state to keep the order, and the capitalist class at the head of the factory to keep us in line. So it stuck. It was endlessly reproduced as an incontrovertible truth, and, like the divine right of kings, became the myth that holds the justification for capitalism together. But it doesn't take much to see how contradictory this view of humanity is. It assumes that we are perfectly rational in economic affairs, geniuses at the grocery store able to make complex decisions and assess value on goods to find the perfect equilibrium between cost and return, but irrational idiots the second we have to make decisions about anything else, especially in the halls of government or academia. This is a useful contradiction for capitalist economists, because as soon as people act irrationally, meaning not like what their theories predict, economists can blame it on the fact that people are dumb when they aren't acting like the self-interest economic animal they expect humans to be, and their economic theories stay perfectly intact. Human nature is a safety valve for capitalist economics, a heuristic that can be used to model a society that just happens to benefit capitalists and simultaneously can find a justification when the model fails to explain reality. And at this point in the video, I want to bring us back to socialism. A lot of the misconception about the impact of human nature on socialism comes from the fact that socialism is often poorly defined. Socialism, when we talk about human nature, is often viewed as a society where everything is the same as it is right now, except that people share. That is not what socialism is, and it's easy to see how one greedy, selfish, or cruel person could completely ruin it if socialism depended on people being nice and the honor system. But in reality, socialism, at the economic level, isn't about sharing. It's a society where if everybody needs something, it's owned collectively, and we all get to decide how it's distributed. The means of production are held in common and subject to democratic control. Instead of individual business owners making decisions about production to serve their self-interest and submitting them to the market for review, and so be it if some people get none and others get almost everything, under socialism, the things that affect all of us are decided by all of us. This can take many forms. For example, banks could fund business projects on the basis of a democratic mandate, instead of venture capitalists and for-profit banks calling the shots. Businesses could be run by the people who work there, and who either elect their boss or make strategic decisions by vote, instead of your boss just being some random guy with money. Your town could hold meetings where people point out what's missing and devise ways to fill the gaps, instead of waiting around and hoping someone will find a way to solve the problem in a profitable way. Trade wouldn't disappear, but profit would. You can be as selfish as you want in this context, but good luck convincing everyone else to prioritize your needs at the expense of everyone else's. Without the power to withhold something from someone else because you're the sole owner, what you'll find is that these systems reward those who collaborate. This doesn't mean every little thing has to be approved by everyone else, or that you have to be nice. Everyone is free to be independent so long as that doesn't require taking independence from someone else in the process. All socialism means is that for decisions of societal importance, it's only right that a democratic process applies. Today, we live under a system that rewards those who screw others over. That's a legitimate winning strategy to get ahead under capitalism. In a socialist economy, the only difference is the winning strategy, not the people. None of this implies a perfect society where no one is ever upset, just a society where greed doesn't let a few lucky people take advantage of everyone else. At the end of the day, we'll always squabble about what human nature really looks like. But holding ourselves back by imagining we can't transcend our weaknesses isn't going to get us very far. I mentioned at the beginning of the video that this episode is made possible by Ren. We talk a lot about the failures of capitalism on this channel. One of the more obvious ones is our complete unwillingness to transition away from fossil fuel use, which has led us to the greatest crisis humans have ever faced, not to mention countless other species. So when Ren reached out to see if I'd be interested in working together, I was cautiously optimistic. As we all know, it's important not to individualize a systemic problem. Even if all of us as individuals take steps to reduce our emissions, we still have to contend with the power and greed of big business and the military-industrial complex, the main drivers behind the climate crisis. That being said, there are tangible ways each of us can contribute to the fight against climate change. One of those ways is through carbon offsets. Now, that comes with a big asterisk. There are plenty of shady groups out there that will take your money in exchange for vague promises to offset your carbon emissions, kind of like a modern form of indulgences. You feel better, but nothing really changes. It can be a challenge to find real, scientifically sound offset projects. Well, I'm happy to report that Ren is one of those projects that actually makes a difference. Ren is a website where you can calculate your carbon footprint, then offset it by funding a diverse mix of carbon reduction projects like tree planting, mineral weathering, and rainforest protection. When you sign up to make a monthly contribution to offset your carbon footprint, you receive monthly updates from the projects you support. You get to see what your money is spent on, with photos and details on every tree planted, every acre reforested, and every ton of carbon offset. One of the more interesting recent projects is the destruction of huge quantities of CFC refrigerants, which would otherwise leak into the atmosphere and accelerate climate change and continue to damage the planet's ozone layer. And this is just one of a number of promising projects aimed at helping tackle the climate crisis. The fight to rein in climate change and ensure a livable future will require more than just carbon offsets. But this is an easy, concrete way for each of us to make a tangible difference. So offset your carbon footprint with Ren. Be one of the first 100 people to sign up using the link below, and get your first month absolutely free. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can check out my other content by following the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.
It's a really good, really good video. Let me leave a thumbs up on that one. Oh, come on. Do we watch the Vosh video of why the left is addicted to losing? I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's now infighting on both sides. However, I think he's specifically talking about the further left than what's currently politically accepted, meaning more than just like the Democrats and maybe the Green Party, but like, I don't know. Okay, so Marxism Paul, or Marxism Today. So I keep saying his old channel name. Episode 4 of what's it called? Socialism 101 had a reference to a video called Marx in the House episode, or it's a podcast called Marx in the House by Space Babies. The question is, what episode 4? Here, let me do this. I can type, I swear. Actually, I need this. What's Hassan's thoughts on Second Thoughts videos? Because honestly, I don't know. Hassan was a good introduction to coming into the left, like a left sphere, and I don't know. Since I've been going further and further into like reading and everything, I've been pushing further and further away from Hassan. I don't know. I feel like
the biggest risk, Jeff.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit more extreme, but maybe I don't know. I will not. I'm pretty sure he voted for Biden just for damage control, but I'm still.
How much of a negative it is.
I don't know. Let's see.
All right, let's watch this one.
This episode
Let's
and
see. I
others
want to
like
see
it are
this.
made
I've
possible by
never
the
watched
generous
this. I
support
want
of
to
my
see if this
patrons
is good or not. Here,
on
this is
Patreon.
a
My
form of
AdSense
theory.
revenue has completely tanked in the last couple months. So if you'd like to help support this channel and get a bunch of cool perks while you're at it, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
Who could possibly think socialism is a good thing?
Socialism is a cocktail that never should be tried.
No, it's turpentine.
None of those
Blah.
ingredients are good.
The last thing we want in the United States is socialism.
According to a new survey, 70% of American millennials say they'll likely vote socialist, and 1 in 3 of them view communism favorably.
The term socialist has been gaining traction for the past couple of years. There's a good chance an increasing number of people around you are using that word to describe themselves. More and more Americans are. Maybe one of those people even sent you this video. Maybe one of those people even sent you this video. This video is about what people mean when they call themselves socialists. I'm going to be covering as much ground as possible in as little time as I can to give you a better understanding of a word we hear all the time, but that rarely gets explained all that well. And before we do, I know
Reacting
that
to
at least a chunk of you will
reactions.
be coming in with
Gotta
a
love it.
negative opinion of socialism.
I'm actually
and
gonna
that's
react to
totally
this.
fine. Feel free to voice that in the comments or the invisible to you but very real to me dislike bar. All I ask is that you stick around for a while after you do. Politics is all about disagreement, but to have meaningful disagreements, you need to know what it is you disagree with. Let's get started.
Does Hasan consider himself socialist? No, I'm a capitalist, bro. I love
D-
fucking capitalism, dude. It's my favorite thing. It's like a kink, really. I love doing capitalism.
The central idea that unites all socialists is maximizing freedom
Okay.
for everyone, regardless of who they are. Generally speaking, socialists want people to have the kinds of rights that ensure they have that freedom. The guaranteed right to education, healthcare, food, and shelter, to participate in and constitute democratic bodies, the right to free time and leisure. All of these are rights that increase our freedom and the extent to which we can flourish and live a good life. But it's not enough that these rights exist on paper. People need to be able to exercise them. If you have the freedom to an education, but can't afford to spend even 1 hour less on the job to go to class, then you don't really have the freedom to an education. The law says you do, but you're not actually free to enjoy it. Think about it like this. We might have missed out on 1,000 Einsteins because poverty kept them from achieving their full potential. Having freedom and the actual ability to exercise it is critical.
I need to pack this really quickly. Hold on.
And this central concern with freedom
Stoked.
isn't very surprising. Every political theory wants to maximize or guarantee freedom in some way. If the US had its own ideology, Americanism or something, its advocates would also say it's all about freedom. And to be fair, capitalism did after all become the way of life for most people around the world, at least in part because it allowed some people to be more free than they had been before. Because before capitalism, there was something else. Feudalism. Think medieval castles with heaped tables of George R.R. Martin-esque pigs with apples in their mouths and guys with cool names like Torf. Under feudal society,
Torf.
the people who were free made up a tiny group. Kings and other nobles were free. Everyone else
Dude,
lived.
I love this. I love talking about how, I mean, I've been saying this for a very long time, but I love fucking making the comparison to like the justifications for the consolidation of wealth and the accumulation of capital and wealth under theocratic monarchies revolved around just saying that God decided that the king should be the king, even though it was still physical power, wealth accumulation over centuries and whatnot. However, what happened under capitalism, which we think is so much more advanced than feudalism and like the serfdoms and also monarchist societies, is that now the accumulation of wealth is no longer about divine right, but instead about meritocracy. The concept that these people are working smarter and harder and therefore deserve all of the fucking wealth that they've accumulated. Meanwhile, the entire system is designed in a way for them to, especially if they've reached a certain level of fucking wealth, to continue being wealthy and make even more wealth off of their pre-existing wealth. It has nothing to do with, and meritocracy is the lie to justify that. Divine right was the lie to justify theocratic monarchies. Meritocracy is the lie to justify capitalism. That's it. The wealth accumulation is still at the top in an almost identical capacity. The powers, the right to be able to do justifiable violence is still very much in the hands of those who own our bourgeois governments for the most part.
Lived under their control and generally had very little freedom. After all, nobles owned all the land in their kingdom. So if you weren't a noble, but you wanted a place to live, to not be in total abject poverty, and to have a semblance of security, you were forced into working the noble's land. A pretty sweet deal for the nobility, because once you had done all the work, farming and whatnot, they would collect their taxes and force you to give up the products of your labor, grain, meat, or the money made from trading them with others. But feudalism wouldn't last forever. The emergence of capitalism changed feudal society into something entirely new. Over a couple hundred years, merchants gained more autonomy from feudal lords and became a whole new class of relatively free people. Nobles lost a great deal of power both gradually and in violent revolutions, and the number of free people grew from
I'm
just
getting
a few
close to
hundred nobles to
110.
thousands of people who weren't just born into the right family. Capitalism was born. And we can see how
Merit does factor into it, but you cannot outwork luck. No matter how hard you fucking work, okay? There is still an element of predetermined destiny within your reality, okay? Within your future predicaments that you're going to get into. You understand? And as long as probability still exists, and it is very much an incredibly important facet of success, you will never be able to reach the meritocracy that people claim exists, okay? That's not real. It's not real. I would not be in the situation that I'm in currently if I didn't come from an affluent background. Not because like my family was able to keep me afloat. What the fuck? I can't even speak. Especially in my adult years, but because when my parents were wealthy, when my father was wealthy, and then he lost all of his wealth, regardless though, that's besides the point. When he was wealthy, he was able to make sure that I got the best education possible. That gave me a significant upper hand, which is why I always get frustrated when millionaire, billionaire defending Republicans will regularly say, oh, well, actually, only 20% of wealth is actually passed down to the next generation. Like, out of all the multi-millionaires and billionaires, a small, tiny percentage of them actually get, like, directly wealth from the generation that came before them. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, that doesn't mean anything, though, because it doesn't have to be directly a trust fund or something when your fucking parents die. That's not how people make their money. They make their money by going to the best fucking schools. They make their money through a sequence of nepotism, through a sequence of fucking connections that their parents have created so that the generation, their next of kin, can actually, have a profoundly better shot at getting incredible fucking an incredible network and go and get like an awesome fucking job that is not available to the average working class person's children, okay? People refuse to recognize this concept, or most people do recognize it, actually. That's why they get so mad at nepotism, right? That's why everyone's always like, oh, I'm fucking so mad. Nepotism. Yeah, you're not mad at nepotism. You're mad at capitalism, okay? If we did not live in a capitalist structure, you would never, ever bring up nepotism as a fucking reason for why things suck. True, the most stable job I found was through revenuism. Everything else was part-time, precarious contracts. Are you denouncing TYT right now? No, man. I am literally a beneficiary of not only affluent beginnings, but also nepotism as well. Of course, these are things I admit regularly. Holy fuck. This does not, oh my God. Once again, I am being attacked for things that I readily admit willingly all the fucking time by people who think it's a diss to just be like, oh, got you. You're just repeating what I'm saying. Why is TYT brought up every time? Dude, no disrespect to TYT, I learned a lot when I worked there, but like you also have to recognize that like I myself alone have been able to reach higher levels of success than TYT, and especially when I worked at TYT. So clearly there was a little bit more than just TYT that
fucking
stance, don't you think? How this new system works today.
eviling out his
Under
head.
capitalist society, your boss is part of this new group of free people. He, like the nobility of the previous economic era, has a lot of freedom to do what he wants, and a lot of the decisions he makes for himself trickle down and ultimately affect you. In the relationship between the two of you, it's ultimately him that has the power. For example, your paycheck isn't determined by how good a
shit.
job you do, but by what your boss decides it to be. He has that freedom. Directly or indirectly, your boss hires and fires who he wants. You work for him and spend your days producing something that he can turn around and sell to someone else. This allows him to make a profit. Regardless of whether he's a nice guy or not, his profit calculation will demand that he take into account a few things, like how much he needs you and how many people out there are gunning for your job. The more those people are desperate, for example, because without their job they might end up homeless, the more he can push your wage down. The more homelessness or poverty there is, therefore, the better it is for him. Your salary isn't determined by how dedicated you are or how valuable what you do is, but by how disposable you can be. You can get up and protest him messing with your paycheck like this, but in the back of your mind, you know that if you push back too hard, you risk ending up with everyone else who was fighting to get your job. Under feudalism, people were made to work the noble's land and hand over the product of their labor. They had no choice and very little freedom to do otherwise. You work the land or you're going to be in a world of hurt. Now, you need to work the corporate, industrial, or service industry gig and hand over your time and whatever you produce while you're on the clock to the capitalist.
Yep. Fuck off. Advertisements.
In theory, you have the freedom not to work, or to work for whomever you want, as well as to negotiate with your employer. But in the same way serfs needed a place to live and food to put on their table, money from employment in the capitalist industry is necessary to live, and it's not like the power is balanced between the two of you. Not long ago, during the dawn of this new economic system, most workers had to hand over the majority of their life, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to their employers, often from a young age and in unspeakable conditions. We only very recently made this somewhat more bearable. The reason we haven't made even more improvements today is that capitalism did not actually represent much of a fundamental change from feudalism. The relationship of domination and coercion isn't all that different. It's just that this time, the size of the group with freedom is slightly bigger. A couple thousand instead of a couple hundred. And you don't necessarily have to be born into it.
Yeah. The fact that there is like at least some kind of upward social mobility, and I will tie this back to race as well as class, but the fact that there is like a little bit of upward social mobility alone immediately is used as proof to be like, listen, dude, look, I mean, some people made it. Why can't you? Look at that guy. He was homeless and now he went to Harvard. You know what I mean? There's always like, these rags to riches stories that they pump out, right? A little bit of social mobility all of a sudden is, showing everyone, proving everyone that you can actually succeed under a capitalist system. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The exact same concept that is used against anti-capitalists is also used when it comes to race. How could you say that there's racism in this country? Don't look at all of the structural inefficiencies that is built into the system. Don't look at the criminal justice system. Look at the black person that's wealthy. See? He did it. Why can't you? Okay? That's exactly the same exact fucking argument. The exact same counter. The existence of like relatively wealthy black people does not change the white supremacist systems that we exist under. Okay?
System, for all its flaws, hasn't been all bad. In general, living standards have improved under capitalism for a lot of people. Capitalism is a net improvement in some ways from the society that preceded it. But just like feudal society became outdated, so too has capitalism. There have always been problems with this narrative of rising living standards, but recently, capitalism has started to fail even the people who once got a decent shake out of it. 2 or 3 generations ago, it was a no-brainer that a job could get you a house and enough money to support a family, pay your way through college, and get access to healthcare.
I wonder what fundamental thing changed in American existence that caused it to happen. Now, the racists will look to this and go, oh, it's because black people are taking up a piece of the pie. It's because there are more minorities that are no longer like as exploited, right? Whereas the real reason is literally because unions have been fucking eviscerated. If workers have no way to collectively bargain, if workers have no way to go back against and fight against the inherent class contradictions baked into a capitalist order of the economy, a capitalist organization of the economy, then of course capital is going to slowly but surely take away more and more of your benefits. Profits have a tendency to decline. Okay, so what are you gonna do? You have to squeeze out as much profits as possible. That's what capital owners do. And the best ones, the ones who are the best at fucking squeezing out profits, are the CEOs. They get rewarded for it.
You weren't exactly free, but you weren't doing too badly either. That is no longer true. The few people at the top have been given so much freedom to keep the money you made for them by working in their offices, at their storefronts, and in their factories that there isn't much left for you. High school and college graduates, once guaranteed stable employment and livable wages, are losing out. Nowadays, between 40 and 50% of college grads are unemployed or working in a job that doesn't require a diploma, indebted at rates that completely overshadow their salaries. And the story's the same across the economy. For someone working at Amazon to make as much money as Jeff Bezos does in just 1 year, they would have to work for 58 years. And that's just with his salary. If we start counting dividends, you'd be working every day of every year of multiple lifetimes just to catch up to Bezos' single lap around the sun. Clearly, it's time for an upgrade. Socialists look at this march of history and ask two questions. One, is there a better way to get the same results as produced under capitalism? And two, what is it? In other words, how do we keep the parts we like from capitalism, rising living standards, and cut out the parts we don't like, the exploitation, imbalances of power, and massively uneven distribution of those rising living standards? The big answer for socialists lies in who owns things like companies. The argument goes that so long as there is just one, or at the most a few people who own our society's productive enterprises, they will be able to make decisions that benefit them and not us. Your boss, because he has been given the freedom to do so, will use his power to curtail yours. He will always try to push your wages down as low as possible, make you work the longest hours you can, make your working conditions as dire as possible, because it's cheaper that way and rakes in more money for him and the other people who own the company. While he has to balance that with what other capitalists will do and try to offer better conditions, hours, or wages, every step he makes in the right direction has to contend with his profit margins. If something is unprofitable, even just by a fraction of a percent less, he can't do it. He can't risk some other company being more ruthless than he is and undercutting his business. The only choices that are on the table are the ones that make him wealthier, even if that means making you poorer or generally worse off in the process. Socialists take stock of all these incentives and try to understand how we can change them. Instead of the most important thing being the capitalist profit, how can we incentivize things that benefit all of us, putting more options on the table than just the ones that make the guy at the top richer? And we have a lot of ideas on how we can do this, from central planning, to free association between communes, to worker-owned cooperatives, to cybernetic management. However varied these ideas are, and truly there are a lot of them, they are all united by the same conclusion: that the best way to figure out which ideas benefit everybody to the fullest extent is to let people decide for themselves. Give everybody control over what ideas we want to see happen and how. Instead of a few people at the top setting the rules of the game, everybody should get a say over things like their working conditions. Control over what gets done and how, for everyone, by everyone. Not by some self-appointed class of millionaires and billionaires who get to boss everyone else around. And you intuitively know that this works. How many times has your boss made a decision you know is in the wrong, but you're the one who has to live with it? How many times have you been told that there's just not enough in the budget for a raise, or for you to take that day off, but the company is raking in record profits? How many decisions are kept behind closed doors until they blow up in your face? You might not always have the answers to every problem your company faces, but if the solutions of those at the top are so good, why are their decisions made behind closed doors? Why do they always make them better off and not you? Socialists understand that this isn't a system.
And this process is so inherently undemocratic, which is why it's always weird when we fucking talk about, which is why it's so weird when we talk about like how much better we are than like, you know, older organizations. Oh man, we're so much better off than fucking living in a feudalist society. Like, come on, it's like, or we have a democracy in this country, unlike those other bad countries where there is no democratic process. Like, motherfucker, you spend 80% of your life inside of the fucking workplace, and another man you basically are not calling daddy is your daddy. Multiple men, as a matter of fact. They're telling you what you can wear, what you can't say, what you can't do. They're constantly telling you to do things that you don't want to fucking do, okay? And then they're making decisions on your life, like they're making decisions on your life in an inherently undemocratic capacity, and you're supposed to sit there and go, yeah, you know what, this is actually appropriate, because, like, hey, guess what? I'm too stupid to make that decision for myself. I'm too stupid to make that decision for the entire company. We can't get together as an entire company and make this decision ourselves on where the profits should go. Where should we actually, should we invest it back into the business? Should we invest it back into a better compensation structure? Should we invest it back into, better benefits? Nope, can't do that. You're too stupid. You're a fucking worker. Okay? That's why the managers have to do it behind closed doors. Because if they were to do it in front of you, if they were to do it speaking about, like, what they are going to do to you, you'd say, wait, hold on. I don't want that to happen. That's fucking bullshit. I should have a say in this matter. Why the fuck are we doing stock buybacks? This is bullshit. If we have cash on hand, how about we see some of that? We generated that value, right? No. Wrong. That's why the capitalist dogma creates fucking workers, okay? They create servile workers, though, unfortunately.
That makes anybody more free or makes things any more fair. Freedom is a two-way street. I can't be free to do what I want if you have the freedom to stop me from doing it. I can't be free if you make all my decisions for me. By all means, when something only affects you, you should be able to do what you please. But if things like my livelihood get involved, it's only fair that we all get a say. And it's becoming clearer to more people growing up today that their odds of living a decent life aren't as secure as they have been in the past. It's going to come down to a lot of luck whether you end up doing well for yourself and living what we might consider a normal life, even if you work really hard.
But workers are not owners, shareholders, though. Yeah, they're not. They're considered stakeholders. Okay, and the only thing that is considered in the process, in the decision-making process, is actually shareholder value. Okay.
But even though we see how our current capitalist society is...
If you aren't happy with what your job involves, then leave, and leave go to where the next capitalist that's going to exploit you. Sounds like a good plan. Fair enough.
It can feel scary or even just hasty to jump to socialism for the answer. We can recognize the flawed incentives and inherent...
I guess you could just ignore everybody else that's exploiting people, right?
The historical record, after all, hasn't
just go somewhere else that's going to exploit you and just ignore it, right?
That's what we've been told. But contrary to what is commonly believed, the performance of developing countries in the period of state-led development was superior to what they've achieved during the subsequent period of market-oriented reform. There were some spectacular failures of state intervention, but most of these countries grew much faster, with more equitable income distribution and far fewer economic crises during the bad old days than they have done in the period of market-oriented reforms. Moreover, it is also
if doing work is your idea of being exploited, then it shows how lazy you are. No, if doing work, listen, you could do work. You can do as much work as you like, but if once your employer starts asking for more than what you're specifically required to do, work is the backbone of society-driven growth and innovation. Bro, most of the innovation in the United States was, like, based off of government subsidies. Like, you're literally on the internet, which was subsidized by the government to be researched and created. That's not even correct? What do you mean that's not even correct? What do you think DARPA was?
The answer is no.
In the ARPANET. That was all literally created by
the DMV sucks?
Government subsidies.
Decision to increase salaries for all workers by 1.5% earlier this year. The cost of a cut to our PTO, our net annual raise is 0.2%. See, that's
most innovation. No, I don't think most innovation comes from subsidies.
Like when Amazon decided to increase wages to $15, they literally did so not from the profit margins, not eating into the profit margins, but instead by restructuring the compensation agreement that they gave to all the fucking workers, right? What did they do? They took away your stock option.
Hold on.
And some people, depending on...
Alright, so name me some examples of innovations that weren't... I'll be willing to take back that line. It's just I would like to know how much you believe is not basically based off of research and development that's usually government subsidized. Okay, hold on. Let's start off with maybe the telephone. No, Edison probably wasn't part of the government, so I'm sure any iPhones or whatever. But here, hold on. Let's see. Uh, we can't even fucking search this based off of anything, or else there will definitely be character biases on anything. Private research and development has literally driven most of the technological advances we see today. Such as? Here. We'll play this while you're
Where they were
giving me the
got a $15
the
minimum
facts.
wage, but also on top of that lost all the benefits they were getting in the form of stock options, therefore making less, like bringing in less income at the end of the year. That's how it is.
Hi, I'm Marcus Trufant, former Seattle Seahawk. You probably don't think about it much, but thousands.
Just wait until the government takes over.
Was it his
everything else.
ideas?
You think the government is screwing you now? Just wait until they have even more power. Obviously, a world of DMVs as dictators isn't what socialists
Like
want.
electricity?
Who in their right mind would defend something like that? Part of the problem is that that question is being asked in a pretty deceitful way. What counts as the government doing stuff? Sometimes government programs are measures for wealth redistribution.
Yeah, I know. I'm not like trying to push it on you, but
food stamps. Other times it's basic stuff that every government, regardless of its economic model or ideology, takes care of. Things like fire departments.
I'm sorry, my
water
chat
systems,
is a little bit
sewers, or street lights.
back.
In this list
So
are
like I
also
have a couple.
institutions like the police, the military,
I don't know.
the FBI,
All right.
and CIA, courts, and prisons. Wherever
It was
you
his
are on
company
the
that
political
developed them
spectrum,
further.
There are going to be things on this list that you don't like, and other things that you do. When you imply that socialism
Okay,
is when the government
and
does stuff, and you're already primed to be wary of the word, your mind
Okay.
easily jumps
Fair
to
enough,
whatever thing
fair
the
enough.
government does that you don't
I'll
like,
take
because
back
the present government does the worst, hence the DMV
that
and the
line then.
authoritarian stuff. But regardless, that's not what socialism is. Socialism is a society in which the means of production, factories, farms, offices, basically the things that produce for the economy, are held by all in common and subject to democratic decision-making, rather than that of a few individuals. Nothing more. While governments are one way to coordinate this ownership, it's not the only one. What's more, there's a deeper problem with this question. The way we think of government isn't absolute, empty of all context. As humans, we have a hard time imagining a world that isn't like the one we have now, which means we also have a hard time imagining how our governments could be different from the way they exist today, under capitalism. And you already know what that's like. Companies pumping in billions to get some guy elected and in their pocket. Public services working on razor-thin budgets and being genuinely infuriating. The people you
Socialism
for not
wouldn't
doing their jobs
push
and getting
innovation
paid
as
quite
well
a
as
lot,
capitalism
pretending it's
does.
not their fault. Every election going to the lesser evil. The default vision of government we all inherit is one of incompetence, unresponsiveness, corruption, and elitism. It benefits a select class of one-percenters and only tosses a few crumbs to the rest of us. The main promise that
And
socialists
wouldn't
have
react
keep
to
is that we
market
can turn
forces
this
as
all
well
on
as
its head.
capitalism.
That we can truly arrive at democracy, one that isn't awful and out of touch, by directly involving people in the democratic process at their job and stripping all the power away from the billionaires that sit at the helm of massive corporations with the power to lobby democracy away. That we can coordinate, through planning or otherwise, the production of things in such a way that we are producing according to our needs and desires.
Well,
not
that's
for the
debatable
profit
though,
of
right?
select
Because you
few.
have market
Profit driven
socialism,
markets
which
sometimes
actually
get this
deals,
right, in all fairness, broken
which
protocol,
also deals with markets, but
are
I'm not
still
even
very
sure.
often terrible
Hold
at
on. Market socialism. This is one of the variants of socialism, which actually probably would be more democratic than what you would see in like the USSR or like China at the moment. But I honestly don't believe this has ever been tried. It has some theory behind it. reaching all the way back to what, 1848? It's the earliest I've seen in here, based off of mutualism. Oh, that's only for Prodoan anarchism. The problem with democracy, by the way, is that it's slow. We have a leader for a reason. We don't need to vote on everything. Um, sure, we don't need to vote on everything. But do you believe that we should be voting
on our wants
on more than what we currently are at the moment?
and needs. Hence why housing is so unaffordable for most people, why homelessness is always so high, why education is out of reach for millions, and why healthcare costs continue to skyrocket. The demand is there. Capitalism is terrible at providing the supply. The mission set out by socialists is to deliver on the promises of capitalism that capitalism can't actually provide. To give you and your
Hi
loved
from
ones the
Brazil,
security,
comrade. Hello, how are you,
stability,
buddy?
and the good life that you deserve, and that is within our means to provide.
Like
to
what,
all,
workers
who are
don't need
not
to vote on
greedily choosing to
anything,
take
really?
advantage of their undue power and getting in the way.
Well, I
If
mean,
socialism was never capitalist,
do you believe
if
that the
society was
manager
capitalist, always socialist, what would it
like
be like?
knows,
The world be like? Would it not
or
be
well,
technologically
like
way behind?
actually,
Capitalism
honestly,
is
in this
crazy.
corporate structure that we currently have, I don't think I can actually use it like as an example compared to like
world-changing innovation has come from
a capitalist
people
perspective
who,
from
have
earlier
enough
forms of
funds.
capitalism. Hold on.
They do not have
But do you believe that like we don't? Okay, hold on. How am I? Let me phrase this correctly. Do you believe the managers give the correct amount of responsibilities to the workers currently in this situation, in this current environment? Am I from USA? Yes, I'm from Washington State. Technically, I moved from New Jersey, but I'm currently in Washington. I mean, honestly, for the most part, understandable. Okay, fair enough for you. Um, back when I worked at a metal factory. I totally forgot to start this. I worked at a metal factory for a decent amount of time. People get the responsibility. You are 100% correct. People get the responsibilities. Do they get compensated for those responsibilities? Because I mean, in the last three jobs that I've had. I mean, I can't use this because it's anecdotal, but like the last three jobs that I've had, the reason why I've been pushing further and further into socialism is because, sorry, I keep repeating myself, but the last three jobs that I've had literally pushed more responsibilities on me without actually increasing the amount of value that labor or amount of money that I was given. Despite adding extra labor value to me, I was given less money. Was I in steel? No, I was in aluminum composite. I was working a CNC machine that was built by, I don't know if you know this company, Axes. I ran an Axes panel builder 5018 for like 4 or 5 years, as well as basically took those panels off and built them into things before shipping them off into the field. We weren't unionized, but the field workers usually were. Um, but yeah, ever like I've been pushed on more. I started off as a metal fabricator. Um, and I started realizing I don't get performance increases. Well, I never got. Aluminum composites is quite niche, correct? Not necessarily. I mean, there's in the United States, there's a lot of places that have like aluminum composite panels on their buildings, like the architecture. Let me see if I could bring up some. Um. Let's see, did I do any of these? No. But yeah, they're like usually I mean, I guess it's more commercially after I would say 2 or 3 years into me doing this, my boss started working on also I think residential. I think he started making smaller pieces for residential, but usually it's for commercial buildings. It might be niche, honestly. Being that there's a lot of ways to actually put like display the outside of a building. Here.
Concern themselves with
But yeah, this is
short-term profits and failure.
like I was saying,
The only thing capitalism
I
does
just kept putting, I mean,
is
giving the price of
unironically,
all aluminum composites and the
force
applications
people
building
to
panels. I'm guessing the
short-term
profits is
thinking,
quite low. Um,
refusing to
I
quite
mean,
literally innovate. That's it.
it depends, cause like
The
I'm
famous
pretty sure
capitalist
I've done
Einstein
projects that were like
invented
150,000.
anti-vaccines. Those are all publicly funded
Inglorious
research
Capital would
with
account for
public
that.
funding,
Wait, hold on.
with no interest in
If
profit
I'm
motive
making panels
whatsoever.
for a
It's one
building
of the greatest lies
and my
told by
boss
capitalist
takes
corporations,
most of
actually.
that
The
money,
idea that like
that's
the
glorious.
idea that all of these things that are being
If I
created
make
in
the
these incredibly
panels, if I
costly government
manufacture the
facilities
panels, if I ship the panels out
with
myself,
no
if I did
care
all
or
of that labor
consideration
and
for like, you know, quarterly dividends
granted,
and
granted, I
short-term
couldn't,
profit-seeking,
I had no collective bargaining
short-term
in that
profit-seeking
situation.
interests. All of those things are actually the creation for profit. All of these things were done at the behest of profit.
That's not
Why?
glorious.
Because capitalist corporations bought those things from the government, or took those things from the government, or still utilize those things.
In order for a business to make profit, it needs to take money from somewhere, and usually that's the workers that are working. And of course, I'm sure you can go with yeah, because like your job is relatively low skilled and no major decision. What do you no major decision? I had literally had to reshape panels because they were like incorrectly created on the job site. And sure, like I'm confused as to like how that makes any sense if I'm creating a commercial building that's you would consider that low skilled, or is it just because it's a trade, because it's a like a monotonous trade? You're creating panels. Yeah, I'm creating panels. I'm manufacturing the panels. I'm putting the panels into somewhere to be shipped. I'm creating the packing list. I'm at times making the panels on the computer to be fabricated as well. Oof. And like I don't understand. Niche panel. Hold on. Hold on. Let's see. Um I can't just put GDP for this. Would you consider that a niche market? $6.11 billion. I'm not trying to be like an asshole. I'm genuinely curious what if that's would that be a niche enlarge it? Yeah. That or are you trying to hold on? Do you want me to enlarge this? Oh shit, hold on. Let me do this. This is going to be a lot easier. And then the game capture right here? No. So this is stating, and this was published in October 2022, that in 2020 it's the global aluminum market, composite market, is at 6.11 billion, and it's going to go up to 10 in 8 years from then, and we're 3 years into that. I can't do that math. Here, let me mm, oh, that's like, I did that for that, right? Oh my god. I'm trying to properly I can't. Okay, maybe it is niche. The steel industry has a gross value added of 500 billion, which is, oh wait, hold on. But the magnitude of the steel industry impacts on society and what. All right, where? Okay, so I can't really use both of these because this is the global market, not just the United States market, which obviously is going to be more conflated. See what we got in here. Enlarge. Okay. Let me go back to this. Okay, so if even if that was niche panels, my boss is still having an agreement with whatever company that's buying those panels. He has a plan. Basically, the way it's set up is that he accounts for all of the everybody's labor, all of the hours, the cost of the material, and then he sends off a contract, right? That's normally how any contract would go. The thing is, when he would also when he would do the hours, he would assign it to pay wages that were far more than what we were getting paid, right? So say I was making 13 an hour, he was bidding the jobs as if I was making 21 an hour on top of his own capital that he's making on top of that, right? Because that's accounted for, but like that's what pushed me further into socialism. If you're interested in that, I mean, I'm sure. Sounds like the group together a collective wage for the entire company. He grouped together a collective. Yeah, well, no, he okay. So he had one for the installer. Sometimes he just installed. Sometimes he manufactured the panels, sometimes he did both. He averaged everybody in the shop, which everybody made basically the same. We had one person making maybe at most 20 an hour, and then everybody else at 12 and 13. And then he would base it off of as if, 21 an hour was the average. And then when he was installing, I don't know how he did the install. He couldn't do much of that because with the installation, he had two companies. With the installation was a second company because that company needed to be unionized in order to start working on some jobs in like New York City and everything. But he grouped a collective wage for the shop when he would just send out panels, and then who knows, maybe he did both the shop and the installers, which wouldn't make much sense because the installers had prevailing wages, if I'm not mistaken, and they have to be at a certain rate. We got derailed. That's fine though. You don't know about this story, to be honest. Fair enough. You don't have to believe me. This is also all anecdotal. So oh, you don't believe that okay, so I'm guessing maybe that was a hyperbolic statement, that specific reason is why I'm now a socialist, right? Well, I mean, I've heard socialism in the news since what, 2016. Couldn't get enough of that out of our glorious President Trump, right? But once I started hearing that in the mainstream media and everything, I started doing my research into it and everything, and understanding. I of course read the Communist Manifesto, most of State and Revolution, Mutual Aid, a couple of Mao things, and like it's honestly, it's reading it, I agree more and more with what they're saying because, I mean, I'm currently watching a concentration of wealth happening in America that's just disgusting. And you could cough it up to government interventionism. I mean, I've seen people use that as the excuse, the idea of a deep state. But I mean, I don't know.
That the government is offering, and put a fucking nice little shiny cone of paint on it.
Like it's anything more than 20. Yeah, okay,
Man.
fair enough.
But that's why, yeah, motherfuckers.
Fair
think Jeff
enough.
Bezos
It is
fucking
only
delivered,
20
The
pages,
only thing Jeff
but
Bezos
you know
did was
what?
the top of the hour ad break.
It's a lot smaller than Capital, which I'm currently working on.
Now?
But
What's funny is capitalism actually drives development of the cheapest and fastest solutions rather than the best ones. The idea that without profit motive, we human beings are void of motivators that can't create out of passion, thirst for knowledge or advancement. Yes, that is capitalist dogma. That's capitalist dogma. That's it. We are closer to fascism right now than even social democracy. Socialism ain't happening anytime soon. I don't disagree. I don't. But I also believe that the only way to defeat fascism thoroughly, once and for all, is to not let it fucking breathe at all. And the only way to choke out fascism is through socialism. Fascism is a mechanism of control. Fascism is an extension of capitalism.
Around 90.
Obviously, you can have like something resembling, I guess. I mean, you really can't. You really can't have like a workers' council back fascism. Like that's why I always laugh at like the idea of Nazballs because nationalism in and of itself is anti-materialist. Like there is no definition.
okay, fair enough.
There is no tangible nationalism. It is like completely oxymoronic. It's like
I don't know if you were in here when I had said this. Um,
believe in the abolition of unjustifiable
I had
hierarchies,
initially
right?
started
You
watching
believe in the
Hassan,
abolition of unjustifiable hierarchies. There's not
and
the entire system of capitalism is designed
that
around
was
an unjustifiable hierarchy. And
through
the same goes for like
2 years ago,
patriotic
2.5 years
socialists
ago,
or
and
national socialists
I
or
don't know.
whatever
I've
the
been
fuck, right?
pushed
I
a
mean, it's
little
not a
bit
real
further
movement
left
anyway,
than him
but
to the
such
point
a
where I
silly
kind of
one
like can't really
because
watch him anymore.
socialism revolves around redistributing or seizing the means of production and controlling the means of production in a dictatorship of the proletariat rather than the dictatorship of the bourgeois, which is the capitalist organization of society. It is rooted within dialectical materialism. Nationalism, on the other hand, is an unnecessary distinction that is completely frivolous.
Yeah, Hassan's not
and
really that far
unironically
left.
Counter-revolutionary and reactionary. The idea that like you're different somehow from workers in another country.
Pretty
You're
sure
also
he
a part of the working class in
all
another
he did
country,
was like
and that you should be able to exploit
pretty
those
sure he's been
workers in
voting
another country,
Democrat
specifically because you live in this other country that is national socialist or whatever the fuck
and
is
trying
a silly
to
one. And history has shown time and
push
time again that
for
nationalism
democratic
is actually the foundational principle of
policies,
said
but
movements, not socialism. It's just anti-communist. It always turns into an anti-communist, counter-revolutionary, reactionary movement. Is imperialism also basically capitalism? Well, one could say that it's the final state of capitalism. Imperialism, that is. It is a
you don't think
necessity
that's the
under
most effective way
capitalism.
for no,
Very
actually I
true.
don't.
Think about that.
Um
Wow, those words. Did you make
Bernie
those up? Yeah,
Sanders
totally.
literally showed
It
that you
wasn't someone
can't
else who said those words. Yeah, no, I
push
made those
for
up.
that many you can't push for
I made words
that
like
much
that up
progressive
myself.
change if you just
Of
go into the
everyone having
thing,
a livable
into
baseline
the
to build upon.
platform.
In short, no. Socialism is not when the government does stuff.
And like
You get to decide what
also
gets
with
done.
like
You
honestly look at the
participate more
what is
directly
it, the
than before
squad?
in the
Like
decisions that affect your day-to-day life.
three of those
Socialists aren't
voted
against competition.
3 of those voted specifically to like make striking illegal for the railroad workers because oh no, it's going to damage our economy rather than allowing workers to have like what extra paid days off. Is that what what the strike was going for, if I'm not mistaken? And they all voted in favor of the owners, the business owner, the railroad owners, rather
We're
than
also
the
big fans of
workers.
innovation, but we don't want to see competition and innovation.
They
being
they
used
they
as
claim
excuses.
they claim they wanted to help and then they don't do shit. That's why basically all of the fucking all the Democrats do is they say that they're going to do something and then they fucking say, "Oh, we need to just be united with the Republican Party. We need to just, be accepting. We just got to chill for 4 years. It's fine." And then they do absolutely nothing.
To push most people towards poverty and make the lucky remaining few ludicrously wealthy. Still, this all sounds well and good in theory, but socialism doesn't work in practice, right? And here we have to pause for a second and understand that socialism, like capitalism, exists on a continuum of policies and ideas. There is no fully capitalist experiment, just like there is no fully socialist experiment. Saying socialism doesn't work is as wrong-headed as saying capitalism doesn't work. More generally, though, it's not like there's a good experimental method to base that conclusion off of. It's not like we can take two countries, control for all their differences, and let them run loose with each economic model. No two countries are the same, start off from the same point, or exist in a vacuum. We can't compare country A to country B and
Yeah,
call
but
it
we
a day.
currently have a dictatorship which like makes changes based off of the capital that they have. There's already what an elite class that the Republicans call like the globalists and the deep state, and on the left it's just I don't know, big pharma, big tech, big whatever. Like in this capitalist system, our companies, all they got to do is just throw money at politicians and that's okay. And bam, they have whatever they want. The people that are actually doing the work, however, the even though they don't have capital and they vote in everything, it doesn't work. It only works if you have the money to make it work for you. But who knows? Maybe this is just because it's not a popular idea in in America. But that's also why I mean, it's probably cringe for me to say this, that I'm trying to spread a message of some sort. Can you name one major policy that's been driven by deep state, big tech, that the country doesn't agree with? Do you believe that like the prism system should be in effect? That we should be redirecting all of our internet traffic through yeah, hold on. Prism. This is um the system from which the NSA gathers all of its information. I don't even know if this is direct related to, actually. I don't even know if this would be considered a deep state program. I'm just considering this a bit of big tech, and this is our government attempting to basically interact with private companies like Facebook and everything. Facebook, AOL, Yahoo, Google, all to basically pass all of our data through a system that they could collect. This is the reason why Edward Snowden was basically like exiled. Not even exiled. He probably would just be on trial for treason if he stayed in America for showing that. But what else can trying to find a major on the prism. Okay. 2013. All of these have here. You can watch this one. We could say that's enough for now for that one.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
What are some of the positions that you held previously within the intelligence community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
One of the things people are going to be most interested in trying to understand who you are and what you're thinking is there came some point in time when you crossed this line of thinking about being a whistleblower to making the choice to actually become a whistleblower. Walk people through that decision-making process.
When you're in positions of privileged access, like a systems administrator for these sort of intelligence community agencies, you're exposed to a lot more information on a broader scale than the average employee. And because of that, you see things that may be disturbing, but over the course of a normal person's career, you'd only see one or two of these instances. When you see everything, you see them on a more frequent basis. And you recognize that some of these things are actually abuses. And when you talk to people about them, in a place like this where this is the normal state of business, people tend not to take them very seriously and move on from them. But over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up, and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored, the more you're told it's not a problem, until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who's simply hired by the government.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions.
Would also be curious if you think socialism would make the state's involvement with companies' data even worse.
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can, by any means possible, that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest.
My belief is that
originally we saw that
the idea is we need to start decommodifying. And if we can make it so that our data can't be sold,
it's happening domestically. And to do that,
then I don't know. I think that's the biggest problem, is the fact that we can sell, that companies sell our data.
It collects them in its system, it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores
they wouldn't have an incentive to sell our data.
Simply because that's the
if that,
easiest,
but the
most
NSA isn't
efficient,
using it to
most
sell it. No, the NSA is probably buying it.
So while they may
that, or they're just getting it for free. No, wait. Targeted ads are probably buying that information. The targeted ad companies.
They're collecting your communications to do so. Any analyst at any time can target anyone, any selector, anywhere. Where
I'm not 100% sure where
will be picked up depends on the range of the sensor networks and the
company data
that
would be
is empowered
within
with.
a socialist system.
Have the ability to target everything. But I, sitting my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
One of the extraordinary parts about this episode is that usually whistleblowers do what they do anonymously and take steps to remain anonymous for as long as they can, which they hope often is forever. You, on the other hand, have decided to do the opposite, which is to declare yourself openly as the person behind these disclosures. Why did you choose to do that?
I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. And if you do that in secret consistently, as the government does when it wants to.
I'm not sure, by the way, where I fall on the leftist kind of spectrum. I do know that I am somewhere as a socialist or Marxist of some sort.
But they rarely, if ever, do that when an abuse occurs.
I am a part of the Socialist Party in the United States.
But they're typically maligned. It becomes a thing of these people are against the country, they're against the government. But I'm not. I'm no different from anybody else. I don't have special skills. I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong. And I'm willing to go on the record to defend the authenticity of them and say, I didn't change these. I didn't modify the story. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
Have you given thought to what it is that the U.S. government's response to your conduct is, in terms of what they might say about you, how they might try to depict you, what they might try to do to you?
Yeah, I could be, rendered by the CIA. I could have people come after me, or any of their third-party partners. They work closely with a number of other nations. Or they could pay off the triads, or any of their agents or assets. We've got a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong, and I'm sure they're going to be very busy for the next week. And that's a fear I'll live under for the rest of my life, however long that happens to be. You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time. But at the same time, you have to make a determination about what it is that's important to you. And if living unfreely but comfortably is something you're willing to accept, and I think many of us are. It's the human nature.
I'm not gonna sit here and blame
You can get up there.
capitalism directly for Prism either. Honestly, that I only stated the Prism system because you said big tech, and I figured since that's kind of a big tech thing. I don't know, but let's see what else. As far as other policies that are driven by deep state, that's a good question, to be honest with you. I can't even search that because I'm just gonna get biased fucking videos from either someone. Let me see. Let me see what we get. I think I would have been driven. Okay. Um. Let's see. I need to. Now I might need to back off of something that I've said. Shit. Um. How many people favor single payer healthcare? Hold on. Or this is in 2020, 2018, Yale study in 2022. This one in 2021. The United States does. It's still highly controversial. Yeah, it honestly, I had just watched a video where Anna Kasparian and Ben Shapiro were talking about this because the way, no matter how, like, well, basically what Ben was saying is no matter how you poked at it, either through a left perspective or a right perspective, it's going to fall because, or you're going to get a massive backlash because it's still really up in arms in America. Um, but here I'm seeing like I don't know if this would be a better alternative or not. I don't know. Universal. I think it's kind of annoying that most healthcare is basically tied to an employment. Granted, in the state of Washington, there is Apple Health, which is the state provided healthcare insurance. I think it's based off of the amount you make, but also like I haven't paid for that. Which I feel is weird.
Socialist experiments often happened
Oh
in
wait, hold on.
countries.
No, this one. I wanted to finish
Every
this
day,
one.
you can go to work, you can collect your large paycheck for relatively little work against the public interest, and go to sleep at night after watching your shows. But if you realize that that's the world that you helped create, and it's going to get worse with the next generation and the next generation who extend the capabilities of this sort of architecture of oppression, you realize that you might be willing to accept any risk. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, so long as the public gets to make their own decisions about how that's applied.
Why should people care about surveillance?
My point being, though, in a democratic country, how can you blame money as a source of problems with healthcare when the country is nowhere close to agreeing on it? Well, the problem is like, okay, fair enough. I don't know where I was going with that one. But how many people are still put like? I mean, nobody can get to this point. Like nobody can even touch this because like I don't even know where I was fucking going with that one. Fair enough. Okay. Maybe you push me back on that one. I haven't done enough research into deep state ideology because like that's something that I've heard more from an Alex Jones perspective than anything, and obviously he's not left leaning at all, but I get a lot of pushback from well, not pushback, but like discourse from the right about am I a capitalist? No, I'm not a capitalist. Just because I agree a little bit, that doesn't mean I'm a capitalist. I'm not going to sit here and agree that like I don't think it's fair that we live in a system where there's a business owner who literally just used his money. Well, okay, I could always use my money. I'm going to get the argument of I can always use my money, and I already know this, but I don't like how he can use his money to buy the labor value of somebody else who could easily work 10 times as hard as he's paying him and not get anything back from it. And sure, he could leave if he wants, but we have a problem in this country where it's not like you can't just go and get a better job at any given point. Okay. Okay, that's a dumb thing for me to say actually. Hold on. Let me try to rephrase this. I don't like the fact that the business owner is taking the surplus value of a worker. Fair wage is dictated by market forces and his value to the, if a business owner hires somebody to make panels. I'm going to use the panel situation because I've already been in that. If he hires me to make panels, and he expects me to make 8 panels a day, and I make 16 to 20 panels a day with zero extra money, I ask for a raise and he says no because you're still only doing your responsibilities. Is that fair? Or this is too individual, and this is too individual and anecdotal for me to say this. I'm sorry. Don't you think that's a little what's the word? You're saying he gets a fair wage dictated by market forces and his value to his company. You know that 100% for certain. Like you're already at a destination of the situation, even though you don't know 100% sure that's for certain. If that's the case, then how are profits made? If he's truly getting compensated the value of his labor, then how are profits made?
Because even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded, and the storage capability of these systems increases every year consistently by orders of magnitude, to where it's getting to the point you don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context.
Yeah, but the value to his company and the value his boss believes, the boss's subjective version of his value could be completely different. What if his company isn't assessing his skill? What if they just say, yeah, you're doing it on this way. This is how much you're going to get, and that's it. Like you're already giving a lot of prescriptions to the company. But am I giving too many prescriptions to the worker? And this value is driven by job wage of other companies and what they offer for someone of his skill. So the value that the worker creates isn't determined by his own labor. It's determined by the company and the company's views of his labor. Is that what you're telling me? Because he could be doing 3 times the work of like the work of 3 people, and the company could still just be like, yeah, he should only be making like the value of 1. But that's also me giving a prescription to the worker. That's kind of a bad faith argument. I don't know. It's kind of both, but it's not. But the thing is, the worker can always add value to himself by adding productivity. Well, I mean, you can't always, but you could be more productive while not being compensated for that production. Does that make sense? I'm sure the go-to would be he can always go find another job that will pay him the same amount, but or pay him his value. But the problem is like that's not determined by the worker. The value is determined by the company usually. If the worker's not able to prove their worth and skill, then maybe they're not adding as much value as to the company as you think. Then what are like I don't know. The increase in profits of companies should kind of show that certain workers should be making a little bit more than they are. Um, that's just my personal opinion, though. Maybe I am. Maybe they aren't adding as much to the company, but well, no, this isn't even a but. This is just the next statement. Um, it kind of goes both ways, and at the moment, the only one that matters at the moment is the boss. Profits are important for future investments. In your world, would a company have no profits? What do you mean for future investments? Shouldn't you already have extra like money built into your plan to think about that, or Because in what I believe, to my belief, profits are the excess value of what comes off after you either sell your service or commodity after you've already paid off all of your inputs. I mean, honestly, in my world, I would believe that. What do you think happens to profits? It goes all to it. No, it doesn't. Well, okay. Was that a question to me, or was that like a profits? I feel like, in my opinion, profits go either into the company or into the boss's pocket. Or if you're on the exchange, like the stock market, it would go to the it would go to investors. If it's going into the company, that's for investment, right? Um, it could be. Depends on what they are going to end up using it for. Um, some I know that like some people would like money in their to their company in case like anything happens. Once again, that probably should have already been put into their business model. But maybe it's to grow more. Maybe it's to put out more contracts to get more jobs. However, that's not always guaranteed that they're going to add workers to that um, workforce when they're piling on extra jobs and adding using that investment to grow their company. They're going to be expecting more productivity from their workers for and you can't always guarantee that they're going to be compensated for that extra responsibility.
We are currently sitting in a room in Hong Kong, which is where we are because you traveled here. Talk a little bit about why it is that you came
Feels like in
here.
your head profits are
And
slowly going to the
specifically, there
bosses.
are going to be people who will speculate
Bosses, company,
that what you
or
really intend to do is to
in
defect
like
to
stock
a country
investors,
that many see as the
dividends.
number one rival of the United
I guess in my opinion, I believe that the profits should be more distributed towards more towards workers, not all towards workers, but like some of it needs to probably go back into the company in case, God forbid something happens, they fuck up a job and they need to buy more material. Um Also, I'm looking at this through a very trade lens. I can't really do this with like, a store, right? I mean, I could try to put myself into the perspective of that, but um yeah, I honestly in my head personally, I feel like profits are either going to safeguard companies or into the pockets of the owners and investors. And I'm not saying all. Let me say, not all companies are going to do that, but I feel the majority are doing that, and it's pushing America into poverty. I mean, what was it? A couple 2 years ago, there was a study in which like 50 or 60% of Americans don't even have the like a an emergency expense bill. Um, if I'm not mistaken, also Yeah, don't get me wrong. Safeguarding is okay. Profits for the shareholders drives further investors investment to the company. I don't believe bosses take as much money as you think. I don't know, man. I've seen bosses paychecks, but I guess I can't really. I'm not trying to act jealous or envious of the amount of money that he makes when he was the one that put his capital there. But I'm saying that I don't believe that he did as much as he deserves to be valued at. And I think it's unfair that him being the boss, he gets to determine the amount that he's valued at, and rather than, I don't know, actually doing the work. Again, anecdotal. I'm sorry. I keep doing that. I'm honestly not a fan of the stock market. If you can't keep your business running, then you can't afford a business. Yes. Yes, he started the company. Am I going to get the risk argument? He took a risk. He took a risk to open up that company. If he won, he made millions. If he didn't, he had to go back to laboring, into the laboring class. I won't bother. Look, honestly, I get where that comes from, right? You lose your business, you lose everything. Okay, but what? Also, everybody that you employed also loses everything, right? I mean, they can't. They're going to have to find another job. I mean, granted. Now hold on. Now, because they don't lose the capital used to start it. Do you believe that every business that starts deserves to stay intact 100% no matter what? Because honestly, like, I feel like that's where the risk argument kind of falls. Because, like, also, capitalism decides which companies should stick around. Um, that's what makes sense. Capitalism also concentrates it to businesses that like you're never gonna get into a business where like, okay, maybe you could, but you're not gonna last if you be bought like if you bought a retail shop and you just had a little mom and pop convenience store. It's not gonna that's not going to be able to um compete with things like not Walmart, like Circle K or I'm sure Wawa's starting to get pretty big. Wawa's in the northeast region. There's like it has it's 3 or 4 states there, and then it's also in Florida. The Democratic what? Damn. Well, I mean, not necessarily. Um. Oh, do you believe that any? Oh, okay, hold on. This is a nice discourse. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry if I sound fucking brain dead. You're okay for a Hassan viewer. Would it make you cringe more if I said that I watched a Vosh for a bit? Like I'll watch Vosh and Destiny as well from time to time. Your destiny? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I get my it's not being a fucking straight dick from. I mean, I would like to actually research what I'm talking about. And I mean, granted, I haven't done everything that he has, right? I'm pretty sure he's gone down all of his philosophies down to the fucking pinpointing like every single uh attribute of his personality or whatever, his viewpoint on society. I haven't been able to do that to myself yet. Um so like I said, I could be persuaded, but honestly, I need to do more research, I'm not going to lie. I'm willing to admit that. DXP stands for double experience. Um, I'm getting twice the amount of experience for everything that I'm doing in RuneScape right now. It's an event that happens for 48 hours. It goes for I think 10 days, and you can spend 48 hours in game within those 10 days of getting double experience for every action, which is why I'm trying to get 118 Airblow right now. So would you blame society on the fact that we consolidated to things like Walmart and Target, and we consolidated all of that? We concentrated businesses in America, in my opinion. Like, capital just concentrates itself, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on that? Let me put this back on too. I keep turning this off.
United States, which is China, and that what you're really doing is essentially seeking to aid an enemy of the United States with which you intend to seek asylum. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's a couple assertions in those arguments that are sort of embedded in the questioning of the choice of Hong Kong. The first
There
is
probably
that
should
China
have
is
some
an
regulation to
enemy of the
stop
United
companies
States.
having
It's
complete
not.
monopolies, but for the most
They're a
part, it's
conflict
driven by
between the
what
United
society
States
wants.
government
Okay,
and
fair
the
enough.
Chinese
Um,
PRC government. But the peoples inherently, we
so
don't
what
care. We
what
trade with each other
exactly?
freely. We're not at war. We're not in armed
Hmm.
conflict, and we're not trying to be. We're the largest trading partners out there for each other. Additionally, Hong Kong has a strong tradition of
That's
free
actually really
speech. People
a
think, oh,
sound
China, great
point. Fair
firepower.
enough.
Mainland China does have significant restrictions
I agree
on
with
free
that.
speech, but the people of Hong Kong have a long tradition of protesting in the streets, of making their views
The
known. The
problem
internet is not
I'm
filtered
seeing
here.
though is that like we have hold on, we have a majority of people that end up working at these bigger corporations that have to rely on SNAP benefits and all of that. And like I'm not saying we should get rid of those. We need those. We need social safety nets. It's the fact that like we allow companies to pay people so low that these people have to either, I mean, go on those or attempt, like, I mean, if they can't afford food, like what makes you think they're going to be able to afford to the social mobility to go upwards in society? Do you know what I mean? Is that like, does that make sense?
No more so than any other Western government. And I believe that the Hong Kong government is actually independent in relation to a lot of other leading Western governments.
If your motive had been to harm the United States and help its enemies, or if your motive had been personal material gain, were there things that you could have done with these documents to advance those goals that you didn't end up doing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anybody in the positions of access with the technical capabilities that I had could, suck out secrets, pass them on the open market to Russia. They always have an open door, as we do. Um, I had access to, the full rosters of everyone working at the NSA, the entire intelligence community, and undercover assets all around the world, the locations of every station we have, what their missions are, and so forth. If I had just wanted to harm the U.S., that you could shut down the surveillance system in an afternoon.
Kinda, but the fact that they're getting paid
But that's
low
not my
is because
intention.
they're
I
frankly the
think
skill
for
value is
anyone
low.
making that
Okay.
argument, they need to think.
So
If
do
they
you
were in
believe
my
that we
position,
need
and,
to
you live a
like
privileged
that
life,
it's like
you're
sound the
living
way
in
it is,
in
or
paradise
do you
and making
believe
a
that
ton
we
of
may
money.
need to like
What
lower
would it
some
take to make you
some uh some things like I don't know. I believe that the gatekeeping of college at the moment, like when I went to college, I went to a community college. I didn't get like fucked with the amount of the bills that anybody else did. The most I had is like $8,000. That was 2 years of a community college, and that was just loans that I was given. But I know there are a lot of people that like spend years trying to pay back a loan, and this loan is also ends up being three times as much as what they start out with. Like I can only imagine nowadays how like rough it would be to get into a college or attempt to like pay for a college and getting the initial either initial footsteps or like I don't know because I could see as far as like initial footsteps into the college. I know we have incentives like New Jersey had like a stars program where 20% of the top people in the classes would get like free rides to certain colleges in state. Um, but like people that I guess you could say they fucked up. They didn't. They decided not to college. College wasn't their thing, and they waited. And 5 6 years down the line, they now would like a college education, and they don't have the resources that a normal high school student does. um I feel like it's a lot harder to get the skills required to do certain things, if that makes sense. Like I understand that like if they're sitting there in that job and complaining about it and not doing anything, it's kind of their problem. But also like if we don't have the resources in order to do the things that need to be done, like growing ourself and improving ourselves to the point where we can get a better job in a better industry, it's kind of hard. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Do you believe that they shouldn't be redeemed later in life? They shouldn't have the resources. And they can't. They shouldn't be able to say, "Well, I fucked up these 5 6 years. I need to do something with my life. I need to do this right now." Um, because yeah, don't get me wrong. I would question that too. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I literally spent 7 years at that one company. I complained a lot at that company. Every year I would get a new responsibility. At one point I knew how to make the panels. I knew how to do the job of the assistant man well the the manager, the office manager, the project manager, basically. I knew how to make the panels that would be basically cut on the thing, but they would just be competing with a bunch of new people. Sure, but they would be yeah. That's fair enough. And those younger people will be probably favorited because they have a longer time in the labor field. They would have more but okay, fair enough. I already know that I fucked up. And I'm trying to do my best to get back into a situation where I can better myself. I'm actually going to be applying for a union that's up here for the metal workers, hoping that's gonna work out for me. I've tried to see the light of both sides. I've tried to see the capitalist side of this whole situation. But at the end of the day, it's I have to fuck everybody over in order to make money. As someone in the metals industry, I think that getting that hands-on experience is valuable. Yeah, I had 7 years, I believe. 3 or 4 of them I was fabricating the panels, and then the rest of that was um doing it on the what's it called? Hold on just a sec. Okay, I'm back. That was weird. Um, but yeah, the other half of that was I was spent as a CNC operator. But yeah, I'm seeing like the aluminum composite metals. Like I knew there was another company that was unionized in New Jersey that was I think well I don't think they were unionized. I think they were private, but they also made more. The problem was it was like an hour and a half away from me, and I couldn't. Oh, you don't think that? Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, I really need to get back into there because I miss working with my hands. To be honest with you, right now, um, literally, I moved to Washington and got myself just a job just so that I wasn't like I had no money, just so that I didn't have just no money, you know. But yeah, hopefully I'll get into that. And I remember going to the I went to the union board, like the place, and I just saw there was a couple younger people there, and I was just thinking about that when you said that I was going to be competing with a bunch of younger people on the same level. Fuck, god damn it! I didn't want to know that. I didn't want to think of that. I knew it. I didn't want to think of it. Right now, though, however, I do believe that we need stronger union support throughout industries. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Um, the problem I guess I see is that I don't see how minimum wage is determined, and I don't see how the minimum effort is determined, or low skill, like how valued is what would be considered low skilled labor. You know what I mean? And where would that be around the area that they're getting that? You know, because at the end of the day, shouldn't the low skill labor still be able to afford, even if it's just even if it's like Section 8 housing or anything. They should be able to have a place to live and, put food on their table. Oh, you're very anti-union? Okay, fair enough. You believe that they give the workers too much. They basically bully the companies into making them do whatever they will like. Yes, that seems to be the trend. Well, I mean, I'm I'd probably I was gonna ask what industries, but I'm sure most industries you would say. Could you give me any examples of? I don't even think you could give me examples because that would just be having to, I don't know, take it. I would have to look at this through a whole different perspective in order for me to understand the situation. Um, I'm trying to find some resources on examples. Here, hold on, let me. Damn. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. It's the bad actors. It's just the bad actors. No. I'm sorry. I'm reading through a couple of these sites where hold on, what, for example, referring to an employee as an egotistical fucker and fucking liar. Carbide did that in 2000. Wait a second. And see the national. I'm pretty sure the National Labor Relations Board. They didn't do shit on that, did they? Hold on. It was 2016 when the first time the union was defamed. A union was defamed and disparaged. Wait, found. Hold on. For the first time in American labor law history, a jury found that a union defamed and disparaged an employer while waging a bitter organizing campaign, costing the union at least $5.3 million. Aggressive unions. Hold on. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sorry, I'm not even putting this up right now. Hold on. Let me throw this into a viewable section. Um, get back to this. Bam. Jesus, I not paid attention to that one. All right. So, how can I ask this? What's your thoughts on how to go about? I mean, what should we? See, my ultimate goal right now, in my opinion, is the people that are on Snap that are employed, they shouldn't have to be on Snap in order to live. Now, I don't know if that means I'd have to take a I don't have enough context in order for me to have that information of why they're on Snap and also working. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that a majority of Snap beneficiaries are workers. Uh, like, what would your thoughts like? How would we get rid of boss? I don't know if it'd be bosses paying people so much that they have to be put on here. That's kind of a weird way to phrase. I mean, that would be how to phrase it, but like, I'm also giving a lot of prescription to the workers. Because I believe that everybody that's on a that works currently, if you have a job that you're working at, if you're working full time, honestly, I don't know. I could probably say if you're working at all, you deserve to at least be compensated with how much you need to survive. And I mean, it only makes sense to that like everything else is going up, so why can't labor power also go up? Labor value. Does that make sense? Profits aren't going up right now. Actually, I couldn't even look at that. I can't even. How would you determine that? Because honestly, I have seen like it wasn't recently. It was like probably 6 months ago. From what I've heard, like companies were experiencing like record profits. Maybe I was looking at like the gas industry, oil companies. Maybe I was just looking at the oil companies. Um wouldn't that technically just be GDP? Basically? Damn, they are rapidly. They just adjusted their prices correctly. You don't think that they were like, well, people are going to blame COVID for everything, so we might as well just raise it a little bit? Or is that a little disingenuous? That's just good. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's disingenuous. COVID specifically, in my opinion, if anything, COVID should have lowered rates, right? Because technically we weren't we were on lockdown. Didn't like we didn't have to go out as often. Um I the Russia Ukraine war is probably has an impact on it because doesn't Russia export like billions of barrels a year? All I know is I don't believe it's a pipeline. But I know a lot of fucking people who do. But yeah, the Russia-Ukrainian war currently, I think that has a decent amount of impact. But if that had an impact, wouldn't the would prices really increase that much? Or I could imagine COVID impacting the material requirements for oil extraction though. That's fair enough. That's actually I could see that. Did we get release any oil from the reserves during COVID? Oh, we're selling oil. Wait, the last batch of emergency oil? Okay, I have to refine this to like COVID times. Like peak COVID times, I should say. Oil production, extraction. Yes. During COVID? Barrel labor statistics. Is that? Yeah. The barrel labor statistics. Oh, this is all the prices. This is an extraction, is it? No, this is all. Wait. Demand for oil decreased by 3 million barrels a day. Yeah, this is all about. Oh, wait. Producer and import prices indexes for crude petroleum. Oh, that's a price index. Okay, yeah. Fair. Oh, I fucking hate these paywalls. Fuck you, man. Okay, I'm not. Yeah, there we go. Oh, one of 4 free articles. Cool. Thank you for the 4 articles. So we did stop producing. We. Wow, that's 3 million barrels per day. We stopped producing. So I guess they would just probably they may have just had a reserve, and by the time it started hitting record prices was probably whence they started realizing that they only had 3 million barrel or 9 million barrels per day rather than the 12. Possibly. how close? 1.8 mil until 111. Jesus Christ. Done like 3 mil of experience so far.
Leave everything behind.
I'm just gonna go back and watch everything in a stack-based
the outcome
performance
for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. And the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change, because the only thing that restricts the activities of the surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
I know, we got through all of that. Yeah, Prism was an interesting program. That I can pinpoint that, finding out about that being really interesting for me. That's when I started actually caring more about anonymity. God, I can't pronounce that word. Anonymity. I think that's absolutely crazy. But I mean, nobody even talks about it nowadays. It just doesn't occur to anybody.
That were poorer to start off with, and generally speaking, had to contend with a global economy managed by capitalist adversaries. If this were a scientific experiment, it wouldn't get published. That being said, we can look to the archives of countries that have experimented with mostly socialist economics and see how successful they were, despite the circumstances. One place we might look is Salvador Allende's socialist Chile. Allende was a socialist who won the Chilean presidential election of 1970. In his few short years as president, and we'll get to why they were so short in just a minute, Allende brought incredible changes to Chilean society. He raised wages. Real wages increased by around 22% in the first full year of his presidency.
It occurs to quite a few people. I don't even use Google. Fair enough. Yeah.
He lowered taxes. 35% of Chileans were no longer taxed at all. He reined in inflation, lowering it by over 10 points. He funded massive housing programs, building tens of thousands of affordable homes all across the country. Education also got a big boost, and enrollment at all educational levels grew. Universities in particular were made free, increasing enrollment by nearly 90%. Hospitals and other medical centers were opened across the country, particularly in underserved, rural, and poor areas. Allende extended maternity leave, doubling it from 6 to 12 weeks. Chile saw a dramatic decrease in poverty, and generally speaking, more people could more fully enjoy their lives. And interestingly enough, the bulk of this new economy was organized through Project Cybersign, a decentralized network of computers that would take anonymous, self-reported, and voluntary updates from workers in productive enterprises across Chile to identify areas where resources needed to be redirected. The democratic economy in Chile was highly responsive to fluctuating changes, and Chileans reaped the rewards. GDP grew.
You probably want to see this, but I got a 6-figure job with a pension, doing policy, regulatory work for one of the most progressive unions in the country, and it's partially because of you. Thanks, son. Oh man, it's because of you, motherfucker. Thank you. Good shit.
7% in the first year, production by 13, and consumption by 11. By kicking out capitalist enterprises, not only did the Chilean economy work for more people, it worked better, period. This kind of response wasn't welcomed by everyone, though.
Have an H&R Block Tax Pro do your taxes online, and tax season feels just as good as all those
And
other
before
seasons.
getting
Like
YouTube
wedding season.
I W2 you.
Red or whatever it's called.
Allow me to pull quotes from a particular document, the Church Commission Report on Chile, one of the only documents released by the American government to the public about the extent of its intelligence agency's intervention in a foreign
Or
country.
an ad blocker.
These are all things the U.S. is actually admitting to.
Bro, that's a flex, by the way. Make no mistake.
Covert American activity was a factor in almost every major election in Chile in the decade between 1963 and 1973. In several instances, the United States intervention was massive. The 1964 presidential election was the most prominent example of a large-scale election project. The Central Intelligence Agency spent more than $2.6 million, $24 million in today's dollars.
Yeah, that's JT from Second Thought.
More than half of the Christian Democratic candidate's campaign was financed by the United States. The most extensive.
Why would they do that, you think? Why do you guys think
I'm a
that
fan of
America
Second
was
Thought.
doing that? It's so
I
weird.
genuinely wanted to see what Hassan's reaction to it was.
Video on, dude, this person is an enigma. Okay, I will never understand. What the fuck is up with this dude Jake Trant? Like, half the videos I watch of him are literally just straight libertarian garbage.
Wait, what's going
and then
on?
what? He's like actually defending. They're so fucking
God
weird,
damn it.
bro. I do not
I
understand.
hate how
it.
he
It,
gets derailed.
hurts my
I
brain.
hate it.
Extensive covert action activity in Chile was propaganda. It was relatively cheap. In addition to buying propaganda piecemeal, the station often purchased it wholesale by subsidizing Chilean media organizations friendly to the United States. The CIA supported or even founded friendly media outlets which might not have existed in the absence of agencies.
I'm glad Second Thought gets to enjoy his passion of luxury cars due to the miracles of capitalism.
You certainly would never have like an endowment
for
I don't know, democracy and freedom building or something. Surely would never do such a thing in this day and
Does
age.
he have luxury cars?
Right? I mean, we would never. This would not be like a national endowment like that. That would not happen. Right? We would not have like free radio initiatives if you want to call it that. You know, that are suspiciously called radio free, that are built by the Joe Biden's bike pedal. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Yeah, like free radio, radio free. That would not happen. Obviously, you're so silly. Like what's next? You're gonna tell me that like America's arm that does works under the State Department that does like aid, for example, is actually a way for the CIA to sometimes sneak in arms to countries under the guise that they're giving them fucking bread. No, that's like so dumb. You're so dumb. There's no political capital that you could purchase in other countries by like giving them aid. That's not a thing that could ever happen. What's next? You're gonna tell me that like
let me see.
The American government literally tried to fucking build a fake Twitter in Cuba and then got their shit owned, and the express purpose of the fake Twitter that they built in Cuba was to subvert the Cuban government? No. That they would never spend money stupidly like that. Like they would never fund, I don't know, Cuban rappers with the hopes that they could spark up a anti-communist counter-revolution in Cuba, for example. That would never happen. With the power of rap music, that sounds like some silly bitch shit. Like what they thought, like Lin-Manuel Miranda was gonna fucking was going to destroy Cuba. Is that what they think? I mean, they would never do that with taxpayer money, of course. Everything I just said, I said sarcastically. The American government continues to do every single thing that I just said. It's well documented. It's not even a fucking like conspiracy theory or anything like that. They openly mention all the things that I've told you thus far.
Is that Grand Test
The
Auto?
United States' covert efforts to affect the course of Chilean politics reached a peak in 1970. The CIA was directed to undertake an effort.
You literally streaming a platform started by a rich capitalist who took a risk. Yeah, dude, his risk was so fucking vast. Thank God. Except he didn't fucking. He bought this platform. You idiot. That bald fuck literally got like what $250,000
Grand Test
to, like,
Auto.
what, invent the concept of a fucking internet. Invent the concept of a fucking internet library. Is that wow? Revolutionary, dog. You know, Do you just like go to your public library and go, oh, look at that. That's fucking crazy. The government's what? What? This is like Amazon except free. What the fuck? Is that what you do? Do you just like walk into a fucking library and go, whoa?
Okay, relax.
Did they know this is happening? Did somebody know that this was happening? Right here, it's like Amazon but free, dude. What the fuck? Like, is that what you do? You're like, oh my god. I'm so glad that Jeff Bezos privatized what already exists in the form of a fucking public library, and then literally through a sequence of some of the most predatory capitalist practices, became the single fucking monopolizing force on e-commerce, and then turned around and kept buying a bunch of shit, including this fucking platform, so that they could monopolize the live streaming sector. That's crazy, dude. I love Jeff Bezos. I suck his dick every night. Oh my god, that's what you sound like, you bootlicking cuck. Holy shit. Real risk. You've been giving me money for 4 months. You haven't learned anything? What the fuck's wrong with you? That's crazy.
Reacts to second thought, aka reacting to his great name chat and like.
Also, the risk that Jeff Bezos, Daddy Bezos, has. You want to know what the risk is for a capital owner? You want to know? It's gonna hurt your feelings. It's becoming you. You're a fucking worker. Their largest risk of a capital owner, the largest risk that they're taking is going back to a lifetime of servile fucking working class existence, okay? That's it. It's not like when you lose your fucking business, you get killed. It's not like when you lose your business, they throw you in fucking jail, unless you're literally violating the law, okay? The biggest risk that a capital owner takes is to become a worker once again. And the reason why you, a dumbass fucking servile little piglet, it doesn't recognize the inherent contradictions there is because the system is designed in a way to make you think, oh my god, look at the risk. Look at the fucking risk. Such a big risk for him.
I'm not reading that out loud.
Like the biggest risk Jeff Bezos took
Fair enough.
was being you. Your existence every day. That's how much of a negative it is. Okay? That's crazy. That's crazy that being a fucking working class schlub, Joe Schmo, and then fucking turning around and being like, brother, man, Amazon took a big risk. Dude, you're literally, the risk is you. You are the risk. Living like you.
I'll always take care of you.
To promote a military coup in Chile to prevent the accession to power of Salvador Allende. In summary, the White House, intelligence community, multinational corporations, and military wasted millions trying to stop a popular candidate getting elected in a democratic election, and when it failed, wasted another set of millions trying to depose the guy who had improved Chile by nearly every metric. Their first coup attempt in 1970 would fail, but 3 years later, the US efforts would
I know.
succeed. Allende was ousted as president, opting to take his own life rather than be captured when the Chilean army hopped up
He
on
says that
CIA
as
money,
he's an
took over
employee
the
of
presidential
Amazon.
building. What followed
Well,
was a new
mainly
era
employee
American
of
puppet
Jeff
government.
Bezos.
This, of course, is like one of the countless instances where.
But he doesn't get paid by Jeff Bezos. He gets paid by his
America has
followers.
installed people exactly like this, or failed to install a person like this, or maintain their power, like in Cuba, for example.
Imprisoned, tortured, and killed hundreds of thousands of people. And Allende's story isn't particularly unique. There are echoes of this story all around the world, everywhere socialist alternatives started doing a little too well. We don't have a magic button to rewind the clock and try this again. We can't for
Probably.
sure know if things would have happened differently if by some accident of history, socialism had become our global economic model all those years ago when capitalism was born. But we can still try to imagine what we can do from this point forward. There's no doubt that this video won't have answered all your questions. Imagining a different world is a tedious thing to do, and there are a lot of concerns to be addressed. And it's also usually easier to ask questions about something in the future than turn around and ask those same questions about the system we have right now. If we were as critical with our present society as we are with that of the future, would we still choose it? In any case, I've put a link below to a short pamphlet put together by Verso and Jacobin magazine. Most questions people have when first encountering socialist theory are answered in a few short conversational pages. There's answers to questions about human nature, property, authoritarianism, laziness, and other things that are typically concerning, answered in a fair way by people who believe in a socialist future. I'm one of those people who believes that a better world is possible. You've probably seen absurd caricatures of socialists on TV. The Red Scare never really went away. But I hope this video helps to show that we're pretty normal people. We just think that what we have right now isn't working, and it's time to make a change.
There you go. Kind of an Orientalist narrative, the 73 Chilean coup, and underplays the fucked up local elite. Of course, the U.S. via the CIA had a role, but it's less than what it seems. Only speaking on the Chilean case, because I don't know much in other places. What you are experiencing, or what you're explaining here, is literally just every place where America has had a successful coup. Yeah, or even continues to try to have successful coups. What do you think the Chamber of Commerce
in second
a
thought?
significant role, backed by local billionaires in Venezuela? Oh wait, that's exactly what they did. It's always the local capital owners that go to Big Daddy America and say, "Hey, Big Daddy America, please, please, these guys are doing socialism. It's really fucked up, dude. Hey, actually, dude, they might literally be fucking positive. They might feel positive about the USSR. God forbid. That's how it works. Yeah, they say, America, I'm stuck. Please, step
Yeah.
America.
I
Step
agree
all
with
over
a
me."
decent amount of it.
One dime? No, man, stop. Bro, I watched one fucking video that's like theory adjacent, and immediately all of you fucking nerds in the Discord, did you get like a notification in your Splinter Discord? The Marxist-Leninist Hassan Haters Fund, or the remaining Marxist-Leninist Vanguard that still watches Hassanabi Discord? You're like all out in fucking full force. You're like, dude, come on, watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. You watch like a theory adjacent video. We must watch more of this.
But yeah, I mean, I haven't really moved on the idea that we need to implement more socialist policies in America. I mean, I've gone through a decent amount of these. I usually agree with most of it, to be honest with you. %, not a fan of the fact that a decent amount of the economy is, well, not one. I hold on. I just read your thing. Name one socialist policy you want to stand behind. I believe that we should have a see, I'm gonna say healthcare, but that's like not. That's a healthcare system is gonna be almost impossible to set up. I mean, I believe in the Socialist Party's platforms. The platform positions of the Socialist Party. Let's see. Definitely 100% agreement with minimum wage increase indexed to the cost of living. I'm 100% okay with the graduated, steeply graduated income tax. Have you seen the party platform of the Socialist Party, or here? I'll just do this. Make it probably a little easier. I don't think there's necessarily socialist policies that are being brought up upon the um like Congress or anything at the moment, but trying to get light on the platform itself in order to get these ideas out, you know what I mean? Yeah, $25 an hour. Why not? Why not? And I still that like that that's not even a socialist policy. That's I'm still using I'm still like that's like a band-aid. Like that's not going to do anything. That's not redistributing any wealth or that's or not redistributing means of production and it's not like necessarily socialist. Giving people more money is not like a socialist policy, but I mean, I guess in the realms of a capitalist society that we have right now, having a socialist party uh, that advocates for full employment policy or you know financial and insurance institutions to be socially owned and operated by a democratically controlled national banking authority, which should include credit unions, mutual insurance cooperatives, and cooperative state banks. In the meantime, we call for the re-regulation of the banking and insurance industries. We could probably set up with better trade agreements. Did I just say that I agreed 100% with everything here? I'm not. I'm genuinely asking. I didn't. I'm not trying to sound like an asshole. I genuinely forget if I said that. Because if I do, I'll have to walk that back. I'll have to look into this actually. I'm not 100% sure how they would go about so. I mean, I could probably talk to them at the National Organizing Convention where I can get a hold of the vice council person themselves right now if I wanted. Um, Personally, I would like to see more worker co-ops, worker cooperative models being uh, incentivized. If I became like a mayor, or well, I don't even think I would have the power if I became a mayor or whatever. Like, I would try it, but like, if I could, I would try to enact policies that like incentivized more democratically run business models rather than something like a corporation with a CEO and a hierarchy in that sense. Is that a little too utopia utopic? Would that be the word? Utopian? That would be the word. Utopian. I'm a fucking idiot. Something I'd probably agree with. I mean, there was Tax benefits for renters equal to those for homeowners. That would be something I could probably get behind. Mostly get behind. I don't see how that could be a bad thing. It's dystopian. How so? In my mind, how would a co-op start? Well, in my mind, we're starting at a capitalist economy, right? So we already see how certain things are run and operated, how what the demands would need to be set, right? We can um I mean, I don't know how did Ocean Spray start? They probably saw a need for cranberry juice. And we're like, we're just gonna start a co-op. But no, in all seriousness, like at this point in time, we already see a decent amount of what needs to be done, I guess, if that makes sense. The needs that are currently needed at this moment. So, say I wanted to start making something. I had a product, um, or like I don't know, I wanted to start growing shit, growing like I don't know, apples or whatever. Um, you would obviously have to start with like getting a business license, right? Um, you'd have to create some type of contract with a whoever you're starting it with to get um like one over amount of people, like I guess you would say. One over the amount of people that are currently working on it percentage. So like if there's three people, you would get one out of 1/3 percentage of whatever is being produced. As far as seeding that co-op with the initial money, I'm sure everybody would have to pitch in for that one. Granted, at this point in time, we could barely, if I'm complaining that we can barely get like afford the payments for like college, and I'm sure that people don't have the payments to start a business in that um degree. Hmm. So why would I want a society where everyone pitches in the initial investment? Um, well, that would depend though, right? Because I mean, I guess once yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research into this because I wonder how Ocean Spray works, to be honest with you. And there's a couple other co-ops that are around. I wonder how they actually started. Wait, wrong one. This one. I'm gonna have to do research into this. I'm gonna have to like literally. I might actually have to call them. Call A one. Oh, holy shit! It's a lot of cooperatives here. Hmm. Well, I mean the initial risk would be extremely less. Am I right? Because at that point, we're not talking about like if I mean if this was all of everybody pitched in, right? Let's say everybody pitched in. Now you're talking like we all can give a penny, and what? How? Hold on. There's no way that makes sense. Because honestly, I don't believe the initial amount would be a problem. I mean, initially, I'm sure that now you got me thinking. I'm not 100% sure that risk is much of a risk when you have multiple people going in on it. Like, if there's a dozen people going in on a business that initially needs like $10,000, it's either one person can get the lump sum and pay for it, or like 12 people only pay like $800 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's split up. It's not like initial, like a huge initial seed investment, you know what I mean? Or I might that might just be too disingenuous because I'm like there's too many factors for me to just say that that's not going to be a problem. To be honest with you, I can't just say that's not going to be a problem. Oh, all right. Oh shit, what time is it? It's 1:30. I'm actually gonna have to head off. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want to continue the conversation, I'm just feel free to follow and I'll berate me with questions. I don't mind. I actually have to do a lot of thinking about my positions, to be honest with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, I will take care, you filthy cunt. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. You will see the light of capitalism one day. Okay. Okay, buddy.